All ready down this end? Right, already all comfortable. Members, I think we're all here. I can't see Dad, Lee. I can't see a label. Stop. Morris. After Canny. That's right. Thank you, everybody. Before we start tonight's meeting, I am required to read the following webcast announcement. I would like to remind everyone that this meeting will be filmed live or recorded and uploaded to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. Therefore, by participating in this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings. If any public speakers on MS Teams do not wish to have their image captured, they should ensure that their video setting throughout the meeting is turned off and set to audio only. Members and public speakers are reminded to activate their microphones before speaking and turn them off when they have finished. Thank you and good evening. My name is Councillor Sue Jones and I am chairing tonight's meeting of Planning Committee B. I'll just make some quick introductions so everybody knows who's who. To my left, I have our three planning officers for tonight. We have got Alex Sadowski, we've got Suki Dowda and Yi Chung, and to their left, we've got Amanda Apcar from our legal department. To my right is my Vice Chair for the evening, Councillor Will Hoffman, and to his right we have Therese Larson from Democratic Services, and finally Steve Mitchell at the far end is doing the webcasting for us today. Speakers, I think Therese has gone through all the rules and regulations and the do's and don'ts with you. Please keep to your 3 minutes. We have a large agenda tonight. If you haven't started winding up when the buzzer goes, I will interrupt you in about 10 seconds later. And it's much better for you to bring your presentation to a close naturally and properly yourself, rather than finish because I've asked you and interrupted you. So if you can be mindful of your time, I'd very much appreciate it. Right, good evening, members. I think that covers agenda items 1 and 2. If we can now proceed with agenda item 3, apologies for absence.
I have received no apologies, Chairman.
Thank you. Substitute members, please.
We are expecting, or we have Councillor Bedford, who will be standing in for Councillor Jones on item 10, and we're expecting Councillor Whitehouse for Councillor Amos on the same item.
Thank you. While we're talking about item 10, members, as you're aware, I cannot participate in the actual decision of that item because I'm the ward member. Following a chat prior to the meeting, I'd like to propose, if you are happy, for Councillor Williamson to step up and actually chair that item, and Councillor Kaufman will remain vice chair for that item. It just saves a little bit of juggling. Are we happy? Thank you, members. Right, okay, members, declarations of interest, please. I think that's nobody. Okay. Item 6 are the minutes of the last meeting. Any questions, queries or points of order on those? No, thank you, members. Okay, before we start item 7, I'd just like to put forward a little plea, please. Members, we have got 6 items before us. And if we're still here at 10:30, 11 o'clock, we're going to be beyond making sensible decisions. Each of those items obviously thoroughly deserve our due diligence and care in our discussions and debates and our decisions. So I would ask you to be mindful of the timing this evening, please. If we can avoid repeating points that have already been made, that might help us. Okay, I will keep an eye on the time. it has been requested that if things are going on, we do have a comfort break, which I will also build in very quickly through the meeting. But I think if we can be mindful of the time, it would be helpful. And with that in mind, I'm going to stop talking. And I am going to ask Alex to introduce the first item. So this is our agenda item 7. It is EPF 2596/23. And it's the land at West Essex Golf Club and Netherton House Farm, Bury Road, Chingford. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This presentation relates to application EPF 2596/23, and the proposal is for the construction of a 10.7 megawatt photovoltaic solar farm. The application also includes all the associated infrastructure, including a substation, cabinets, fencing, access tracks and the grid connection. The solar farm would be split across 2 parcels of land with approximately 3.8 hectares at West Essex Golf Club, Bury Road, and 7.5 hectares at Netherhouse Farm, Sewerton Road, which is the site 900 metres or so to the northwest. Underground cabling will connect the solar arrays to the on-site substations and meter cabinets. A further underground cable routed along Lippets Hill and Mott Street will connect the northern and southern sites together. There is a high voltage underground cable which will run from the substation in the northern site to the point of connection on the 33 kilovolt line by King George's Reservoir, which is to the west on that site location plan. The cable connection would be created using direct drilling and no roads would be closed as part of that process. The solar farm itself will generate enough electricity to serve approximately 3,500 households or equivalent over its 40-year lifetime. And at the end of its 40-year lifespan, the solar farm will be decommissioned and all plant and equipment, including underground cabling, removed and the land restored to its former condition. So the southern parcel of land, which you can see on the slide, is at the West Essex Golf Club. The site lies to the north of the clubhouse and the car park. There's a public footpath which runs along the western edge of the site, and there's a woodland along the northern boundary. Beyond that northern woodland, there's NPAS Lippets Hill, which is where the police helicopters fly in and out of. The golf course borders the site to the west and the south. On the southeastern corner, there's the lake, which is used by the golf club for irrigation purposes. The whole of the golf club solar array lies within flood zone 1, which is the lowest risk of flooding. The land does not have an agricultural land classification due to inert fill, so it's not suitable for crop grazing, for crop growth or livestock grazing. The northern site on the slide is at Netherhouse Farm. This consists of 2 adjacent fields divided by a hedgerow. Both of these are located south of Mott Street. The site is located north of Sewerstone Park Cemetery, which you can probably see part of, which lies to the south in those fields. To the north, there's a small belt of woodland, beyond which there are a small group of residential dwellings in the northwest corner. There's a public right-of-way known as Green Lane, which runs approximately where that pink line is on the right-hand part of the slide in a sort of north-south direction, and it connects with a public footpath which runs east to west along the southern edge of the arrays, along the ridge slightly. The majority of the site is in flood zone 1, with the exception of the northern edge and part of the smaller eastern field, which are in flood zones 2 and 3. The agricultural land classification classifies the northern site as predominantly grade 4 agricultural land, which is the poorest level, with a small segment of grade 3, which is considered to be moderate. So as part of the application, a glint and glare study was undertaken and submitted, And within that, it assessed the impacts on residential properties and a number of other neighbouring receptors. Within that, it found that there were solar reflections possible towards 51 nearby residential properties. It assessed 105 dwellings in total. Oh, why is it? Sorry, it's jumped. Sorry, I've jumped a slide. Sorry, rolling back, members. The site's in just for context, the site's in the Greenbelt, and the applicant has provided an assessment of whether the site should be considered grey belt, which obviously is an evolving process at the moment. Officers agree with the conclusions of the applicant that the site is considered to be grey belt. If members are of a different opinion this evening and don't consider the site to be in grey belt, then it would be assessed against the Greenbelt policy, and solar farms are not considered to be one of the prescribed list of exceptions. Therefore, the proposal would amount to being inappropriate development. To justify inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, very special circumstances are required. In the latest version of the NPPF, published in December 2024, a new paragraph was included. Paragraph 160 of the NPPF states, when located in the Greenbelt, elements of many renewable energy projects will comprise inappropriate development. In such cases, developers will need to demonstrate very special circumstances if projects are to proceed. Such very special circumstances may include the wider environmental benefits associated with increased production of energy from renewable sources. So back onto the impacts on neighbours. So solar reflections were assessed, and at 51 of the assessed 105 dwellings were found to have an impact, although that was considered to be of a low impact. One particular dwelling, which is dwelling receptor 90, shown at the bottom here, which I believe to be Carlton House Farm, was found to have the lowest impact, the most impact of those low impacted dwellings. But screening in the form of existing vegetation and other matters, including the fact that it would only affect the upper floor windows of that property and it would need to have direct sunlight, means that there's no mitigation required to make this proposal acceptable in terms of neighbour amenity to this property or any other residential property in question. The comments received from neighbours for reference are from Beachside, Rivia and Lippets End and 4 Netherhouse cottages, which all lie on Mott Street, which is the northern site. The proposed development was also assessed not to have a harmful impact upon the NPAS Lippets Hill airfield or either aerodromes at Stapleford or elsewhere in the district, and the Met Police have confirmed that they have no objection to the proposal. So a landscape visual impact assessment was undertaken as part of the application, and it considered that the proposal would have a slight adverse impact on completion. The introduction of wildflower meadows beneath the solar arrays, once established, were considered to be an improvement over the current degraded level of the site. From a visual amenity perspective, this parcel is well screened from the north, although obviously from the public footpath which runs along the side, there are immediate views, although the level of harm is minimal because it's of the short distance involved. Overall, it's considered this part of the proposal would have a slight moderate adverse impact in respect of visual amenity. So in terms of the landscape visual impact assessment on the northern part of the site, this was considered to have a moderate adverse harm. This is because the solar array, although large in scale, wouldn't change the topography of the site or require the removal of any vegetation, so the hedgerow and all the trees are to remain. The general surface will be beneath the panels will be made into a species-rich wildflower meadow, and there's improvement to the soils on the site. It's considered that this would be sufficient to counterbalance the overall adverse effects on the landscape character and the introduction of industrial structures into the countryside landscape. In respect to the visual amenity side of this, there's a slight adverse impact on completion of the proposal. But again, the site is effectively constrained from the majority of the visual receptors, and the landscaping largely that's existing would aid this. Users of the public footpath, Waltham Abbey 74, which runs sort of to the south in an east-west direction, would have direct distant views of the small eastern part of the site, and visual receptors, including the users of the crematorium and the cemetery, would also see it. In terms of the residential properties, which are those properties in the northwest corner, they're affected to a lesser extent, and the woodland there, to a degree, mitigates that. So the Agricultural Land Classification Survey classifies the northern site as Grade 4 land. That's shown here, the site in purple. In respect to the southern site, as previously mentioned, this doesn't have an agricultural land classification because of its nature of its fill. It can't be used for farming. So the proposed development does not result in the loss of the best quality agricultural land. Impacts on the FSAC. So the proposed development does not urbanise the site, and it would not lead to fly tipping, issues of arson, or the invasion of non-native species. So on this slide, you can see the location, the indicative location of the two solar farms there with the red stars. Obviously, the red line boundary itself encompasses a bit more than that, but it kind of extends between the Chingford Reservoir, SSI. It's about 330 metres west of the boundary of the Epping Forest Special Area of Conservation, so you can see that in the bottom right-hand corner. And it's about over 800 metres from the Chingford Reservoir, SSI, and there's a table there as well which breaks down all the nearby SSIs, Ramsars, etc. Also, just to bear in mind, it's also considered that whilst additional vehicle movements to the site are going to be made during the construction period, when you consider this across the 40-year lifetime of the development, the impact is considerably smaller. So in terms of air pollution, it's considered acceptable on the FSAC. The solar farms would also be fenced off and close to all the public and private vehicles, so that there's not going to be any visitors there for recreational purposes. The only visits during the operational time are going to be from security, as and when they're called out or alerted, or maintenance vehicles who would visit on a monthly basis. The scheme also delivers biodiversity net gain, and environmental ecological value of the site is improved. As mentioned previously, obviously there's an improvement to the soil and other ecological matters. Why is that? Sorry, go back. Can we go back? So, in conclusion, the development is considered to have a moderate level of harm to the openness of the greenbelt. Officers are of the view that the proposal would utilise greybelt lands as set out within the first part of the report. The impact on the openness is considered to be of that level because it's in effect a temporary permission for 40 years, albeit that's not a short-term period, but that's a set period. And at that point, the infrastructure is returned to its greenfield status as is now. If members are not minded to consider it to be grey belt, then, as alluded to in the presentation and the report, the development would amount to inappropriate development in the green belt. Officers consider there are very special circumstances to justify the proposed development, and these are also set out within the conclusion. The proposal would result in a moderate level of harm to the landscape character and visual amenity of the local area, but both of the sites are contained, and given the improvements to the site's biodiversity and soil quality, the wider impact of the scheme on the wider rural landscape is considered to be mitigated. In terms of the loss of agricultural land, only the northern parcel could be used for agricultural purposes. The land is classified as not of the highest value, and in the overall planning balance, only limited negative weight is given to that loss. The proposal would provide energy to the grid for around 3,500 homes. The Climate Change Act, British Energy Security Strategy, and other government policies all identify solar power as part of the strategy for the decarbonisation of the energy sector. EFDC have also declared a climate emergency in 2019 with a commitment to become a carbon neutral district by 2030. This week, it's also been emerging in the Planning and Infrastructure Bill that clean energy schemes that are ready to connect to the grid will be prioritised. Substantial weight should therefore be given to the contribution this development would make to ensuring low cost and secure energy. On this basis, Officer recommendation is for approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, we have one speaker on this item, the applicant Andrew Wiseman. Good evening.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Andrew Wiseman, a member of the West Essex Golf Club and a director of the applicant, which is West Essex GC Green Energy Limited. I thank the officers involved in managing this process since the first encouraging meeting in November 2019. I also thank you, councillors, for your time and diligence in visiting the sites last week. It's a joint venture, half owned by the golf club and half owned by RCT, the owner of Netherhouse Farm. It has the full support of the golf club's members and aligns perfectly with your council's goals for sustainability. The application proposes using otherwise redundant land that is not suitable for farming and barely visible to the public, to generate clean electricity for the next 40 years. This solar project, designed through extensive consultation and tweaks based on your officers' feedback, will ensure minimal environmental or visual impact while delivering maximum benefits. First, the electricity generated will power the golf club, replacing noisy, fossil fuel-powered machinery with electric alternatives and making the golf club energy self-sufficient. Second, the energy will power the electric crematorium that you consented at Netherhouse Farm, making it self-sufficient and therefore a sustainable facility. Third, surplus electricity will be exported to the national grid via a cable running under Godwin Close, connecting to a 33 kilovolt line by King George's Reservoir. Our connection agreement with the grid, secured in 2022, awaits this planning approval to proceed. This initiative directly complements the Council's declaration of a climate emergency and demonstrates how local organisations can turn unused land into a climate-positive solution without impacting its green or grey belt status. Quoting from the conclusion of your officer's report, it is important that sites such as this are brought forward as soon as possible to meet the pressing need for renewable energy generation. With your approval, we can secure financing and begin construction without delay. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much indeed. I would just like to echo the thanks to the members who did go and visit the site with the planning officer on last Friday. So thank you very much for those who did manage to attend. We don't have any ward members who are here to speak on that item today. So I'm going to open it up for discussion now. Members, Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a lot of reservations about this, and I've listened to what's been said today, and I've read the new MPPF and the new planning guidance which was produced on the 27th of February about how to assess grey belt, and looked at all the documents and, of course, been to the site visit, which was really helpful. There's a couple of things I wanted to actually put out and then to say about individual sites, if that's all right. Firstly, I did ask to see all the objections and other comments, and in that there was an objection from the National Police Air Services relating to the glare and aircraft safety, and that is not in the objections. It's in the objections that were sent to me. That's not with the Metropolitan Police, but it does say that there, and I can't find any evidence of that objection being withdrawn, but it is, they are worried about the Safety Act, and obviously as pilots come into view into land and others coming out. The other thing which I think is really important, and that is that policy DM1 has not been mentioned at all, and of course DM1 relates to habitat protection and improving biodiversity. And I think it's actually contradictory to Part B, which looks at development proposals must seek to avoid harm to, protect and enhance natural habitat, species, areas and corridors, etc. Going on a bit, I'm glad that the officer clarified the situation about grey belt, because personally I don't think it actually complies with being grey belt, and if even it was as grey belt, I don't think there's particularly special circumstances, and if it was classed as grey belt, that would presumably mean that it could be developed for housing, which would be most inappropriate. I think there's a paragraph 153 of the MPPF about very special circumstances states that it's not appropriate unless potential harm to the green belt clearly outweighed by other considerations. So that is the gist of it, but and perhaps we come back to whether it's grey belt or not, because I think it does strongly contribute to checking unrestricted sprawl, which is Part A, and it's also in one of our DM policies relating to the green belt. Because if it was developed, as is said in the planning guidance thing, if it was developed, it would also result in an incongruous pattern of development within that green belt. But going on to that, I mean, there was, of course, a dismissed appeal for a previous application, solar farm, southeast of this site, the Netherfield site, and I think the conclusions from that are very, very relevant, and I'll mention those in just a minute. But the other thing that's really important, and that is our DM policy looking after our Epping Forest special area of conservation, quite clearly states at Part C that in recognition of the risk posed to the Epping Forest Special Areas Conservation, urbanisation affects blah, blah, blah. And it also then goes on, it said, will not be permitted within 400 metres of the boundary of the Epping Forest Special Area of Conservation unless it is demonstrated through project level HRA that the development would not generate such impacts. And I think that being 250 metres as far as the golf club one from the FSAC and the SSSI, and what was the figure now, 329 or 330 metres, is within that 400. And I think we've got a very, very valuable part of Epping Forest that we really must protect. I'm also won't go on to the business about crops on inert soils and things, but or whether how much grade 3 there is. But I have got serious doubts on two separately for the different sites. The golf course site, there is serious issue about the police helicopter, and I think that coming in to land at the Lippet Hill. And I think there's also a contrary to DM9, which is to do with privacy and amenity, relating to the home of the existing person that's going to be affected by glare. As I've already said, it's less than 400 metres from the FSAC and the SSSI, so that's contrary to DM2 Part C. I also dispute that it can't be used for growing anything other than wildflowers, as suggested. We already saw grass there, and as far as I can understand, inert soil just means it's not harmful, and there's already examples of it is already having grass and weeds at the moment. But it would be harmful to the openness of the green belt, and contrary to Part A, Dotty 3, and also the MPPF, as far as safeguarding the countryside from encroachment, and I can't see any special circumstances. And if you look at the appeal decision, they also suggested that at that time, it was for 25 years, that their consideration that the harm wouldn't outweigh the benefits, even for 25 years. The site at Netherhouse Farm is much bigger, and it was really peaceful going up there. I was really so tranquil, and we even saw deer even in the afternoon. So people driving up to the cemetery must be really pleased there. But of course it is adjacent to woods, which is actually the bufferland of FSAC. It's also adjacent to, I don't know if it's wildlife reserve or nature reserve, but all along that line. So it's adjacent to those. And that must be taken into consideration. So it's in the green belt, it's abutting bufferlands, and only 329 metres from the FSAC SSSI. Again, contrary to DM2 Part C. I don't agree with the classification of grey belt. I think that is spurious, but that's another matter. But it's also in the landscape area as high sensitivity to change, which Blandford did. So that's contrary to DM3 landscape policy, a character, and the proposal will cause significant harm to that landscape character. And it's also assessed, as was also assessed as a nearby by the appeal officer or inspector. It's an area particularly renowned for protected species, including bats, rare breeding birds. The study in 2009 is unlikely to have changed, except perhaps more vulnerable species. And it forms a corridor between the FSAC and the water in Lee Valley, and there's grazing land for deer. So the installation, they're not 2 metres high, because the map shows that it's going to be 2.7 metres high. But this 2 metres fencing would cause harm to the natural habitats and the wildlife corridors. So that's contrary to DM1, Part B, habitat protection. And I also understand that deer can jump over 2 metre fencing, but they may not be able to jump back, so they do damage to themselves and to the solar panels. But also foxes can get through, and 2 metre high fencing has damage to birds who die, but also it is a corridor, it's a wildlife corridor, so it would be harmful to those wildlife, including protected species, rare breeding things, and bats. And this, again, the substations are the size of houses. They're 3.5 metres high and 4 metres high, which I think is quite unacceptable in this very sensitive area. And the accumulated harms must surely outweigh any benefits of a solar farm. And this is what the inspector said for a very similar thing, that there was substantial weight should be given to any harm to the greenbelt, and very special circumstances would not exist unless the potential harm to the greenbelt by reason of inappropriateness is clearly outweighed by other considerations. And she found on a very similar site there the substantial harm by inappropriateness because there would be loss to openness, and the officer has already said there's moderate harm, but she says that the harm to the greenbelt must be added to the moderate harm to the character of the landscape.
Councillor Dadd, could I possibly ask you to allow the planning officer to
I certainly
come
would
back
be
on
very
something?
pleased, but I haven't been in communication with him.
Absolutely, and reserve the right to come back to you.
So
Alex
I
is
feel,
frantically writing some notes down in response
I feel
to
it
points
is contrary to too many policies to be acceptable. However much we want to have solar farms, is this the appropriate place?
Thank you. Alex, if I could ask you first to actually just talk about the allocation as grey belt. I think just really for members of the public, the grey belt term is a very new term within planning, brought in by the current government's updated NPPF. I wasn't aware that there was any process that was actually followed to identify areas within the district as grey belt formally at the moment. So it'd be interesting to see how that application has come about. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Chairman. So there's an assessment within the report which assesses whether the site is in the grey belt. That's partly been the assessment that's in the report is based on some information that came from the applicant. The report was actually compiled before the MPPG was updated at the end of February, so there's a bit of an overlap there. And obviously, since the PPG has been published, it might be that members consider that the assessment, that whether the site's in the grey belt or not grey belt, they come to a different conclusion. As it stands currently, the site is green belt. Grey belt doesn't change whether it's green belt. Grey belt is effectively a sort of not a subclass, but it's identified as grey belt land, which if it is grey belt land, then that proposal can have substantial level of harm to openness, I think is the wording offhand of the NPPF. So it's something that's been brought in this particular version of the NPPF. In terms of sites within the district as to whether they're grey belt or green belt, we are currently doing that on a site-by-site, application-by-application basis. We haven't got a green belt review which assesses whether sites are grey belt or not, because obviously this only came about in December 2024, and the MPPG was only updated less than a month ago. So the MPPG...
Just interject, it might be helpful just to put the location plan up so that members can have a look at it and just go over what is actually grey belt. So within the MPPF, there are 5 purposes to containing land within the in the green belt. Sorry, and the grey belt considers if 3 of those A, B and D, if the site doesn't provide a strong contribution towards those goals, then it can be considered grey belt. So the first one is if it creates urban sprawl of a large, put it up so I'll make sure that I say it correctly. So to check unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas. Given that the site is outside of a large built-up area, it wouldn't be within. It wouldn't contribute to that. the MPPG says that villages should not be considered large built-up areas. The B purpose is towns should not merge. The development shouldn't create neighbouring towns merging into one another. Given that both sites are within Waltham Abbey, it's not considered that it will achieve that aim, that purpose. And finally, it shouldn't harm historic towns, which is D. The Conservation Officer has looked at the scheme and has raised no objection to the scheme on conservation grounds, and so that purpose is also not strongly affected. So the criteria for it to not be grey belt is that it must not strongly affect those purposes. If it's a moderate or weak contribution, then it can be considered grey belt. Once you've considered those criteria, then you take it into consideration the other purposes joint together, whether and the remaining two are safeguarding against encroachment of the countryside and the preventing the regeneration of towns. So it's officers' views, given that solar farms, these type of solar farms, given that they need to be on large open areas, are a feature that you can expect to see in the countryside. There would be screening around the site through trees and wild hedges and wildflowers, etc. And so the overall harm is not substantial in terms of greenbelt. So that was our assessment of the proposal.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Yes, no, I'll just round up on that. I think it's very hard to think of it as grey belt when we were all visiting last Friday, and the proximity to the footpaths, and certainly people who are walking along those paths at the moment, they've got a lovely view of these open countryside, and the thought that they're going to be walking along and actually looking out across these, I find of some concern. But can I just let Councillor Williamson, was there anything else? Sorry, there was a couple of your points. Absolutely right. There were a couple of your points. If I to come back, DB1 or something.
Okay. So a couple of your points, Councillor Dad, I'll just pick up on. So the MPAS at Lippets Hill, you are correct insofar as the MPAS at Lippets Hill did originally object to the proposal. That was based on the original glint and glare study that was submitted as part of the application. The glint and glare study was updated and in January 2024, and they confirmed that they did not object to that particular version of it. So that's where the no objection on that respect comes from. In respect of the impact on protected species, a Phase 1 habitat survey accompanied the planning application. So the Phase 1 habitat survey looked at all the protected species on the site or using the site, so that includes bats, birds, badgers, anything that's protected by law. And that found that obviously the sites at the moment have no buildings on or features which bats would use. Now, bats would probably live in the woodland, but the woodland is to remain and the hedgerows are to remain. So it is felt that the site corridors would still exist, so the bats would be able to still migrate across the site. And Place Services, who are the ecology consultee, haven't objected to the scheme. So we have to base, our recommendation on their professional comments. In terms of, and their comments also relate to proximity to the FSAC, as stated within the report and as stated within the presentation. The development is not open to the public. It's private. It's fenced off. So in terms of air quality and recreational pressures, it's considered that actually the impact from the proposal doesn't affect the Epping Forest Special Area of Conservation.
Can I just add as well, sorry, that the applicants did submit an appropriate assessment which included looking at the impact on urbanisation because of its close proximity to the forest. ECC Ecology Place Services had looked at it and they found the assessment to be accurate and they raised no objection. We did also consult Natural England, but we got no comments back from them, so we've accepted that it's acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Was that, I think that's Councillor's point. Councillor Brad's point's covered, I think. Yes, and then I do have other councillors waiting who are ready to speak, so I do have other councillors waiting.
I have actually got with me the PPG on the 27th, and it is quite clear. Purpose A, check the unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas. It relates to sprawl of large built-up areas, and it says here, strong assessment areas that contribute strongly are likely to be free of existing development and lack physical features in reasonable proximity that would restrict and contain development. They're also likely to include all of the following features: be adjacent or near to built-up areas, large built-up areas. If developed, result in an incongruous pattern of development. And the example they've got is an extended finger of development into the greenbelt. This would be an isolated piece in the greenbelt. And to me, that is very clearly a strong contribution. It also says in here and in the MPPF that it's expected that greenbelts boundaries should not be changed except making local plans, and we know that there is a greenbelt review expected of us within the next 2 years, and that is where I thought those were coming from. Now, you say also about the, I'm worried about harm to our protected species. You didn't include that in your when you were looking at which policies to look at. And you say that Place Services didn't respond, didn't have any objection, but Epping Forest Heritage Trust, which is the charity that looks after Epping Forest, did object. And they objected twice, very strongly, about the protected species and its corridor, as did CPRE. And so I think that's a bit misleading to say that there have been no objections. But those are the points I'm really worried about. And I think that there are grounds that, and policies that we can refuse them on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. My suggestion was going to be that we don't even consider it as grey belt and we look at it as green belt, because my concerns are that there may well be changes to grey belt legislation in the next 40 years, and when we get to the end of that period, it's at the moment, if we pass this application under the green belt legislation, very special circumstances, it does return to green. Well, it's not actually removed from the green belt; it remains green belt all the way through. I think the appeal in 2011, things have moved on somewhat in the country since that time, and maybe there would be a different judgment on that one today. Once these solar panels are in place, it will be peaceful again. It will be different. I totally accept that. I don't really see it as urbanisation. We've all got to do our bit towards the climate change. We had our climate change emergency crisis. We declared that. I think it's a very balanced decision on this one, but I really would steer away from grey belt. I think that could give us problems in the future. And I think it's actually today that the December 2024 MPPF changes actually come into effect. I I think they actually come into effect today. I say it's a balanced thing. I've listened carefully to the presentation. I've listened very carefully to Councillor Dadd. I'd be happy to see listen to any other contributions. But I say it's a balanced decision at this moment.
It is indeed. Thank you. Councillor Adkani.
In terms of the substation, it was mentioned, but I haven't seen anything in terms of the location and vicinity to the neighbouring. So I know it's a minor change, but is that have you had any objection on the substation, the location, or you haven't?
Yes, going to say. It's okay.
Okay, so thank you, councillors. A couple of points there. I think we need to address the appeal decision that was made in 2012 on the 2011 permission. The situation in the weight that is given now to low and renewable energy projects, I think it's safe to say has changed. We're seeing that in appeal decisions within this district and in other neighbouring districts across Essex. There was a decision earlier last year in Roydon for a solar farm which was refused by the council and allowed at appeal. There's a clear direction of travel coming from central government towards the climate agenda and particularly towards the decarbonisation of the energy sector. This scheme, again, provides energy locally to two existing facilities in the district and also feeds electricity back into the grid. So in respect of the appeal decisions, I think that's just something to be mindful of. Insofar as the location of the substations, no objections were received specifically about the location of the substations. See if I can find. So on this particular slide, you might be able to see it. There's a red outline in there somewhere, which is shown to be the substation on the Netherhouse Farm site. That is on the left-hand side there. So you can see there's a slight indent where the solar panels are. That's the on-site substation there.
Thank you. Councillor Lee, will you?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm not going to go into all that, although I agree with it, and I'm sure half of you haven't a clue what it was all about. My argument is that people that make these decisions, I don't think do enough forward thinking. Just going back on when they decided, and I don't know which government it was, that we'd get rid of all our little fields and our hedges and our ditches because it was better for the economy. No, it hasn't been. It's helped towards flooding. It's got rid of all of our wildlife and everything. So things coming down from the government aren't always right. I've understood and everything I've seen that these batteries only last for about 20 years. Now, we're being told 40, and then in something else it says 25. But it doesn't matter how long they last. When they've run out, where are you going to put them? Not only will the country be like a third world country, it's going to be like a big dustbin dump because you're going to have to bury them somewhere. So that's my argument against it, because I don't think there's enough looked into the full. I won't be here in 20 years' time because I'm too old now, but my grandchildren will, and there'll be so much going in landfill that you won't be able to build on these places. And do we know what damage these batteries will do in the ground? Because we do hear that the batteries from when we had the old milk floats, they stopped it because, they didn't disintegrate and they were damaging the land. So as far as I'm concerned, doing all this is causing future damage for our future children. So I can't support it.
Thank you. Any other members? Councillor Williamson and then Councillor McCann.
I'm not sure there are any batteries actually on the side. It's the solar panels.
Yeah, but it's all this solar stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
Sorry, yeah, can I just try to ask a quick question? Epping Forest Heritage Trust did point out in their more detailed objections that if you take this site in isolation, it probably is okay, but there are loads of sites like this all around Epping Forest. So, you know, you could end up with this setting a precedent that means that Epping Forest is going to be surrounded by solar farms. Is there anything, I don't know, what's your opinion on whether that is an issue and whether anything could be done about it?
Okay, just a couple of points there. I mean, just to clarify, the on site, there won't be batteries in the ground. The solar panels themselves are fixed by individual pile foundations, so they will individually go in underneath each array. Insofar as sites in the district, we haven't got any allocated sites for solar farms in the district. So in the absence of a supplementary planning document or allocated sites in the local plan, applications will just be considered as and when they're submitted. Insofar as why this particular site was put forward, I mean, the capacity has been, there's capacity identified at that particular point at King George's Reservoir. UK Power Networks have identified that, you know, there is a potential to connect to the grid. That's been confirmed by the applicant. And they have done an assessment which looks at sites within a kilometre of the point of connection, which lies to the west of the northern Netherhouse site, and there are no other sites which were identified as potentially acceptable or usable for this purpose. So, I mean, obviously, each application is determined on its own individual merit, and we need to look at the impacts as a whole. I mean, it's a balanced decision, and in this particular case, we have to attribute weight to all those factors. And as I've said before, the amount of weight that we're now giving to low and renewable energy appears through appeal decisions to be significantly higher, and so that's reflected in our officer recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Kaufman, I think you wanted to.
Thank you, Chair. Sort of going to come in on a few different points. I mean, I don't entirely follow the train of thought of the way the scheme has been validated. I mean, as far as I can see, it's two separate sites with two separate owners. They may have some form of agreement between them, which I don't think we've been party to. But my view is it's two separate planning applications is the way this should be considered. And I don't know where our threshold is between, obviously the quantum is 10.7, but when you split it up, it's shown in the report. Was it 3.7 versus 6.7 at the other one? If we consider them separately, what do we think of them? They're two quite separate considerations. That's point one. Point two, I don't entirely follow the concept of the landscape visual impact assessment, because the site is obviously very helpfully positioned next to an anti-aircraft heavy gun site, which had the unique ability to fire across London. So therefore, if it can fire across London, it stands to reason it must be able to be seen from across London. So if we're going to be looking at putting all these arrays on whatever height they are, they're going to be able to be seen from a long way away. You'll be able to stand at the top of the Shard and see, I suppose it'd be good for Epping Forest to be able to see it from the other side of London. So I don't follow that it can have a low impact, therefore. Next point, when we walked the site the other day, it was very obvious at the farm element that the plan has been drawn assuming that the site is flat, when it isn't. It's got a very pronounced dip to it. So if the arrays are going to be arranged on a flat plane, surely one part of the bank is going to be completely in the shade, unless there are significant amounts of work being done to the ground level to correct the positioning. And then there's also the following fact of how do you actually go about connecting the sites together. And the report says 900 metres, but I think it's actually close to well over a mile between the two, which is going to have to be laid underneath Mott Street and Lippett's Hill, which, without there being some sort of documentation from highways or even from UK Power Networks, I don't know how that's necessarily going to be done without causing mass disruption to people. But that swallows it all up in further consideration, which is it greenbelt? I could, in my mind, accept that the golf course is possibly not greenbelt because of what it is. You know, it is part of an established area that's being used for commercial purposes. But you know, my heart doesn't quite sit in the right place with the farm. I think when you have that array with all the landworks which are going to need to be done, plus the fence that goes around it to prevent the animals running through it where they can at the moment, I don't equally follow how there's going to be an increase of plant life living underneath the arrays, because surely the sun's not going to go through the solar arrays to get to the ground to help the grass grow. I obviously look to the officer to correct me how that would happen. So I'm really struggling to see how I can support this, but you know, I await further thoughts from my fellow colleagues.
Thank you. Any other comments, members? Right, in that case, I think we ought to move this to the vote. The recommendation is to approve with the conditions listed in the report. All those in favour of approving, please show.
2.
All those against approving, please show. Sorry.
7.
And were there any abstentions?
No abstentions.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so that means that the application has not been approved. We therefore need to look to see if there is a proposal following that non-approval. Councillor Dadd, I'm going to turn to you if you could summarise the reason. I think there was a general consensus about your concerns. Could I ask you just to briefly summarise your main reasons that you were concerned?
Yes, I think it's contrary to policy DM1, which is habitat protection. Part B, it's contrary to policy DM2, Epping Forest SAC and the Lee Valley SPA, Part C. It's contrary to DM3, landscape character, ancient landscapes and geodiversity. It's contrary to DM policy DM4, Greenbelt, the purposes of A1, checking unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas and assisting in safeguarding the countryside from encroachment, which is dotty 3. It's contrary to DM9, Part I, privacy and amenity, which is to do with the police ambulance thing, I think, because that relates to providing good sunlight, daylight, open aspects, blah-de-blah, and also, I think, relating to the dwelling that is affected by the glare. And DM20, low carbon and renewable energy, Part B, which says proposals for the provision of low carbon and renewable energy technologies would be supported where they, Part 1, do not have any adverse impact on the integrity of any European sites, wildlife sites, protected species or habitats, or the openness of the greenbelt.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor, can I just go back to listed policies?
You have your microphone on, sorry.
You've listed several policies. Can I just go back to them and say how they conflict with those policies? So if you can just give me a line to, so for instance, DM1, habitats.
Yes, sorry, I've got my thing on again. DM1, which is Policy B, development proposals must seek to avoid harm to, protect and enhance natural habitat, species, areas and corridors for biodiversity.
So the place service ecology have not objected.
But Epping Forest Heritage has, and so has CPRE.
Just wondering from here whether we should also include the members questioning whether the allocation as grey belt is correct. I think there was a general feeling that perhaps it wasn't, that we didn't agree with the idea that it was grey belt.
Should that then be a general policy, just a refusal on inappropriate development in the green belt, rather than going to Pacifics? Because it's the
Because if we don't agree with the classification as grey belt,
then it's
if we
inappropriate.
treat it as green belt, it's sorry, Councillor.
I've got the MPPF here. Paragraph 153, proposals affecting the green belt, and it says here, inappropriate development is by definition harmful to the green belt and should not be approved except in very special circumstances. Very special circumstances will not exist unless the potential harm to the green belt by reason of inappropriateness and other harm resulting from the proposal is clearly outweighed by other considerations. So that is one part. But there's also MPPF paragraph 11, presumption in favour of sustainable development, part B, dotty 1, which is strategic policies should as a minimum provide for objectively assessed needs for housing and other uses that cannot be met with neighbouring developments unless, it says, the application of policies in this framework that protect areas or as assets of particular importance provides a strong reason for restricting the overall scale, type or distribution of development in the plan area. And that's where it refers to footnote 7, which is quoted, which is policies referred to relate to habitat sites and those listed in paragraph 189. I'm sure you can pick up things from that footnote 7 because it's quite a few things there. Sites of special scientific interest. Obviously, you can put designated as green belt as well if we're going to consider it as green belt.
Yeah. No, I can see that, and I think they've officers have taken note of all of that. And I think you know the main objection we are having is that we fundamentally don't agree that it should be considered grey belt, and it is still green belt and a very important part of the green belt. And then back up with those.
Yes, so just to confirm, you've got two objections. One, that it's inappropriate development in the green belt and there's no very special circumstances to justify this development. And two, that you believe that it's harmful to the integrity of the FSAC.
Harmful to the
integrity of the FSAC.
Yes, but you wanted to know the policy numbers. And
no, just the principles.
The principles, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we happy with that?
Yeah.
Does anybody therefore want to put a proposal forward? Councillor Dadd. Can you just confirm, Councillor Dadd, the actual proposal, just as not with all the detail?
Right, I propose it is refused as contrary to policy DM1, DM2, DM3, DM4, DM9.
Sorry, Councillor Dadd. I think
you don't need that.
No, I think they will all be incorporated, but I think we actually have to look to the reasons that Suki gave us as a summary of all those. So
I'm happy with that.
Okay.
So,
inappropriate development in the
didn't come in.
Inappropriate development in the green belt that will affect the FSAC in particular.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's 2 reasons for refusal.
Okay, so that proposal is proposed by Councillor Dadd, and I think that was seconded by Councillor Lee. All those in favour of refusing on those grounds, would you please show?
7.
All those against refusing on those grounds?
1.
And abstentions?
1.
Right, in that case, that application has been refused. Thank you. Right. Okay. I'm aware that we have already taken up some time, but it was very necessary and a valuable discussion. So we're going to move swiftly on to item 8, which is 11, the Shrubberies, Chigwell. And I'm going to pass over back to Alex to present that one, please.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So this presentation relates to application EPF 072424 at 11 the Shrubberies, Chigwell. So this application is before committee this evening as more than 5 objections have been received and the application has an officer recommendation for approval. So the application site lies within a residential area at the end of the Shrubberies, a short cul-de-sac of residential properties. Number 11 is currently a detached 2-storey house. The site frontage is hard surfaced and contains a double garage. To the rear there is an enclosed private back garden largely laid to lawn. And you can see the residential property there in the bottom left-hand corner. So the site lies within the urban area of Chigwell, where the principle of development is acceptable. It's an existing 2-storey house in a street of 2-storey houses and 2-storey built form, as you can see there on the left-hand side. There are no parking restrictions on the Shrubberies itself, and there are 2 protected trees in the back garden protected with TPOs. The proposed scheme converts the house into 5 self-contained flats spread across both the ground and first floors. On the ground floor, there would be 1 2-bedroom flat and 2 1-bedroom flats. At first floor, there are 2 1-bedroom units. All of the habitable rooms in the proposed flats would have good levels of light, ventilation and outlook, and they would all meet the size requirements in respect of the space standards. A detached bin store provides facilities for waste collection and removal and is positioned in a location convenient for future residential occupiers and for refuse operatives to collect from the curbside. 1 first-floor window would be in the eastern side elevation. This is shown to serve a bathroom and a condition is attached, requiring it to be obscure glazed. In conclusion, the proposed conversion of the building into the flats would not harm the character or appearance of the street. Number 11 is the only property of this size and type in the cul-de-sac, and the conversion itself does not require enlargement of the house or built form, except for the detached bin store on the front. The site is located in Chigwell, close to a number of services. It is also well served by public transport, so it's considered to be a sustainable location. The proposed development would intensify the use of the site. However, the potential increase in activity would not be harmful in terms of noise disturbance and would not result in harmful overlooking, overshadowing, and nor would it be overbearing. The proposed scheme would provide 6 parking spaces on the frontage, which meets the adopted parking standards. So that would be 1 space per 1-bedroom unit, 2 for the 2-bedroom flat. There's also space for 10 bicycles in the bike store. Conditions are attached in relation to tree protection, and on site no evidence of bats were seen. So on that basis, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions and a completed Section 106 agreement in relation to the FSAC. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, we have 3 speakers on this item. Our first 2 speakers are on Teams. Let's say good evening to Tal Offer. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm speaking on behalf of the residents, and I'm speaking here today talking about the Council's failure to meet the housing delivery test, and by saying that it should not be meaning that automatically it should override the significant harm that this development would cause to the character of the street. While the title balance under paragraph 11D of the NPPF is engaged, this does not mean that all other material considerations should be dismissed. Firstly, the proposed development represents an over-intensification of the site, which is out of character with the surrounding area. And with all respect to the case officer, he would not need to live in the area to deal with the consequences. The scale and the density of new home would disrupt the established pattern of the development, leading to a cramped and inappropriate streetscape, and also create a dangerous precedent which will enable any other property owners to do exactly the same thing. Secondly, the construction phase is likely to cause significant disturbance to existing residents, including noise, dust, disruption over a prolonged period. The increase in traffic and congestion from both construction vehicles and future residents would further strain the local roads, worsening existing transport issues. Environmental concerns must also be considered. The development risks harming trees and wildlife, disrupting local biodiversity and negatively impacting the Epping Forest special area of conservation, particularly in terms of air quality and recreational pleasures. For future occupants, the proposed homes may offer a poor level of accommodation with inadequate internal space, limited natural light, and a lack of meaningful outdoor amenity. Surrounding residents also stand to suffer from loss of privacy, overshadowing, and loss of outlook, as the new building could overlook existing properties and block sunlight. Infrastructure is a pressing issue. The area has already struggles with drainage concern and sewage systems, despite the current number of houses continues to overflow, resulting in incidents with sewage, facial matters, with spilling into gardens. While it's Thames Water responsibility, it's already operating beyond its capacity. I would also like to mention that under UK law, if additional further developments leads to further strain on infrastructure, it's the council or the councillor responsible for approving the development that should be held liable for negligence. Local authorities have statutory duty under the Environmental Protection Act 1990 and the Water Industry Act 1991 to ensure that the public health environmental standards are maintained. If the council fails to consider the existing capacity limitations and approve further developments, affected residents have grounds to pursue claims for damages due to foreseeable harm, including property damage, environmental pollution, and health hazards. The proposed development also raised financial concerns by taking a property valued at 1 million and developing into 4 separate entities. Each newly created property is likely to fall below the inheritance threshold, which is currently 325,000 per individual, which means that it impacts the Tax Act of 1994. This restructuring would result in significantly less inheritance tax being collected, ultimately reducing the contribution to the public purse. As the application is being considered in the context of public interest, the financial implication must also be weighed to determine which outcome best serves the public. Furthermore, after thoroughly reviewing the documents, it is evident that the approval has been granted despite significant gaps in the assessment. Many critical grounds have not been properly addressed or detailed, particularly regarding how existing infrastructure resources will be
Do you need to start winding up now, please?
Yes. This raises the concerns and due diligence of the approval process, which will be challenged at court. Given these concerns, the long-term harm caused by the proposal outweighs the modest benefits of 4 additional homes. Planning permission should therefore be refused. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Our second speaker on behalf of Chigwell Parish Council is Councillor Selina Jeffcutt. Good evening.
Good evening. You can see the parish have a lot of concerns. The intensification is not in character with the area and is in conflict with policy DM9. The officer report describes the over-intensification as an increase in comings and goings. Officers say these won't change the ambience of the shrubberies because of where the flats are. How can that possibly be? The flats will be at the furthest end of the cul-de-sac. Every resident will suffer these increased comings and goings past their homes day and night. We raised the lack of parking. In answer, the report in front of you says this proposal has the required parking spaces as per Epping parking standards. The report is wrong. Essex parking standards and the new 2024 parking guidance both stipulate 2 spaces per 2-bed, 1 space per 1-bed, and a quarter of a visitor space per flat, rounded up. For this development, that's 8 spaces in total. But there are only 6, 25% fewer than Essex parking standards, and our local plans say there should be. And they're too small. Essex 5.5 metres by 2.9 metres. The 2024 guidance goes even further, making the 5.5 by 2.9 metres the absolute minimum. But the shrubberies parking spaces are only 5 metres by 2.4 each. Far too small and with no justification why. On top of that, the cycle parking is not compliant with standards. Our local plan allows reduced parking within 400 metres of a tube station or a town centre or similar sustainable location. The shrubberies is over 1 kilometre from the station. It's not a town centre. It's a very small cul-de-sac containing just 22 homes. Parking is a nightmare. Officers recently recommended approval for a Chigwell development of 14 flats and houses. It had 25% fewer parking spaces than was required and was 750 metres from a station. Fortunately for us, it was refused at committee. Of course, it went to appeal. As so very often happens, the inspector dismissed the appeal. They agreed councillors were right not to follow officers' advice. The inspector said the distance from services and facilities made car usage inevitable, that the reduction in the number of parking spaces was not justified. They found the proposal conflicted with policy T1 of our local plan because there was not enough parking. That was a 25% reduction in parking spaces, 750 metres from a station. This is a 25% reduction, 1 kilometre from a station, in a small cul-de-sac of 22 houses with major parking stress already. A 25% shortfall in stipulated parking, with what's left not even meeting standard size requirements, is in direct conflict with policy T1, which requires that new homes have an appropriate amount and layout of parking. For the sake of the other 21 homes in the shrubberies, please consider the many planning reasons that have caused the parish to object and refuse this application.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Our final speaker on this item is Charlie Bliss in the chamber. Good evening.
Good evening. So I didn't hear most of that, but I think I picked up much of it. So the shrubberies was developed in between the wars as a cul-de-sac, and there's a variety of two-storey semi-detached on both sides. Most of the houses on the shrubberies have small front areas which are now used for off-street parking. 11 the shrubberies, the application site, however, is a large, relatively recently built family home with an extensive garden. It's got a private front parking forecourt and it's secured by high metal gates. I think it's fair to say the house has very little architectural merit. I would also say that the existing building bears no stylistic resemblance to the shrubberies, and there's no contextual relationship between number 11 and the rest of the street. This is not a conservation area, there are no listed buildings, and it's not in the greenbelt. The application is to convert the existing dwelling house to 5 self-contained flats. The proposal is compliant in respect of sizes, access, amenity space, parking, cycle storage, waste management and sustainability. And the proposed construction will meet and improve on national building regs. The proposal also envisages removal of an existing inappropriate extension, and the building will become slightly smaller as a result. There are no proposed extensions to the property. Structurally, the building lends itself well to subdivision, and the works will be relatively simple and contained to sort of internal works. There will be no heavy construction traffic. The proposal has been developed between ourselves and officers over the past 3 years, with at least 5 pre-application inquiries and follow-ups. This is a scheme that's been properly and fully negotiated with the planning department. And at no point have we heard any objections from local councillors. The parish council comments are noted, and I would just make the following comments: that the character of the street is wholly residential, and this will not change. There are numerous flats in the vicinity, and the proposal will provide additional self-contained and compliant dwellings. The context and character will not be altered or changed. The parish council seemed to also imply that the building is a new building, but actually it's an existing building. This is a conversion. Parking is secure and off-street. Cycle storage is provided. The council is required to provide additional housing in the district, and this proposal will deliver 5 much-needed new homes. It is suggested that proposed development is more appropriate than the retention of the existing large house, appealing to both older residents and the younger generation. It's a highly sustainable location with good transport links. The parish council referred to another refusal at Grange Crescent, but that's some distance from here and it's totally different. That was for a new build. This is a conversion. There's no reasonable comparison made between the two, and each application needs to be taken on its own merits. There are no highways objections and there are no TPO problems. We agree with officers' reporting and recommendation and would submit that planning balance firmly tilts in favour of sustainable redevelopment, particularly so in urban locations such as this with established local infrastructure. The applicant agrees to all conditions and accepts them. The proposal will...
You do need to wind up now, I'm afraid.
Yeah. The proposal provides 5 new additional self-contained compliant dwellings at a time when only 66% of the housing requirements have been met. This is an obvious windfall site and subject to permission can be delivered immediately. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right. Councillor Amos. Oh, hang on a minute. Sorry, Councillor Amos. We do have a ward member with us. I do apologise, Councillor Morgan. Having just put a circle around your name, I've still forgotten. My apologies, Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much. I just have a few notes on this. We have, as we've heard, we've had DM9, DM20, T1 for the opposition. Also, I'd love to know when that picture was taken of the street, because I go to opposite the Strawberries most days and you can't go down there because there's cars parked over either side on the pavement, enough room for one car to go down the middle. You can't push a buggy down there, so therefore it's classed as an obstruction on the pavement and on the roadway. As well as that, I feel that it would set precedent because it's not in our local plan for this as a development for 5 properties, and as we heard earlier, that yes, we did mention the Grange Crescent was dismissed at appeal on harm to the area, and it's conflicting to our adopted development plan. So, and there's no evidence required that we need 5 extra flats in the area. And we also heard about the parking. The spaces aren't wide enough, and I believe 2 of them are in the garage. So therefore, we need extra room to be able to open doors, and for, especially if somebody's disabled, they need a lot more room to be able to do that. And you do say that there's local transport links that are good transport links, like we've heard from Councillor Jeffcoat. It's over a kilometre away from the local station. There is a bus service that runs every 30 minutes when it runs. It quite often gets cut out and we do wait up to an hour and a half for a bus. So there's not transport links. We also have lots of conflicting evidence. We've had lots of people moan that this is at the end of a banjo, and so therefore with the development going on and the lorries going up and down, there's not enough room and it will cause harm to the local residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Chairman. Having read the papers before this meeting and having listened to the arguments that have been advanced this evening, I came minded to approve this application, and nothing that I've heard this evening has persuaded me otherwise. And looking at the drawings, I mean, this is a large house. We're not changing the footprint, we're not changing the appearance, and we certainly need this type of accommodation in the district. We haven't got many of these single flats, and I'm fairly familiar with the area, and I know there's been quite a lot of developments where large houses have been changed into blocks of flats or have been converted. There's just one question I would like to ask the planning officer, please, to confirm. He does say, and I'm not challenging it, but he does say the required parking spaces are as per Essex parking standards. That's been challenged this evening, and I wondered if he would like to respond on that. Thank you.
Okay, so in response to the parking, obviously the parking standards has changed quite recently. The 2024 parking standards updated the 2009 parking standards. The parking bay sizes, though indicatively shown as below the 2.9 by 5.5, there is space within the site for those spaces. So we consider that, you know, you wouldn't want these spaces to be white lined at the end of the day. the site is hard surfaced and the parking spaces could be accommodated. There is an existing detached garage that doesn't form part of the parking allowance for the proposal. That's shown to be used for storage for the flats. So as part of the space standards, flats are required to have an element of storage, so that goes towards that element. I mean, there's space, whilst not formally shown there, there is space for visitor spaces to be informally arranged. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the parking standards, we consider that to be acceptable. And there is a bus service. I appreciate it might only be every 30 minutes, but that we consider to be a fairly regular bus service. It's not that far from tube stations, so insofar as it's transport sustainability, that all comes into a balance. Okay.
Thank you. Can I just confirm one thing about the parking? From the report, am I right in saying that you don't anticipate the need for any car parks associated with those sites to actually be parking on the road outside? There is sufficient parking within on site.
Yeah, it's considered that the site frontage is large enough for those, but the street does not have on-street parking restrictions, so there is nothing within our control to stop that. The photo was taken about 2 months ago as well, just in response to the councillor.
Okay. Any other members? Councillor Williamson, then Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. There's quite a few objections. I think in the objectors' comments, there are quite a few things that have nothing to do with planning law. The construction, getting materials in, getting trucks in, value and inheritance tax I made a note of, nothing to do with planning law. And in the objections, loss of outlook, loss of light overshadowing, loss of privacy, we're talking about the same building. So it's exactly as it is now. There is no further harm there. There's a very good reason why it's not in the local plan. It would not be, 5 properties would never have been considered for the local plan as an allocated site. So the smaller developments come under windfall numbers. I'm probably going to upset Councillor Wixley if he watches this online. I'm going to object to condition 11, wheel washing. I don't see why we need it because there's not very much being constructed on this site.
That's very true.
I can see no reason to object to this application.
Thank you. I did say Councillor Lee first, then I'll come to Councillor Dad.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, we've just recently had a very large house that they've done a lot of work converted in Waltham Abbey. So I would just like to make sure that the skips, which they obviously need to be using, will be kept within the property and that they are sort of mindful of the residents. School times, you don't need vans and lorries, which there will be some with going in and out at school times if that's sort of conditions we can make, that they're mindful of lorries and vans coming in and out at school times, and that to make sure the skips for the amount of stuff, which there will be, are kept actually on site. And basically, you don't want them knocking around before 7 o'clock in the morning or possibly after 6 at night.
The normal time. I think the normal sort of...
normal working times, but I couldn't actually see it mentioned.
All right, okay.
I just wanted to make sure, thank you.
Thank you. Right, I'm sure the planning officer will come back to us and confirm that the normal working times are conditioned. I'm not aware of the proximity to a school. Can someone... No, I was going to say I don't. Councillor Morgan. Sorry, Councillor Morgan. how far is it to the nearest school? I'm sorry, I don't actually know the area particularly well.
There's one in Redbridge, which is about 3/4 of a mile to a mile away, and Chigwell Academy is about 2 miles away.
Right, okay. So
there's Limes Farm as well, which is probably about a 10-minute walk.
Okay, I'm just trying to consider what the footfall will
That's
be at
primary school.
time.
The senior school is just over 1.25 miles away. This is West Hatch.
Okay, thank you. Right.
Should we add a condition, the construction management plan?
Just microphone, sorry.
should we add a condition asking for a construction management plan, and within that they can provide details of when lorries or deliveries will be taking place, and that should, and we can require that they're not taking place on school times.
Yep. That sounds eminently sensible. Thank you very much. Right, Councillor Dadd, I think you indicated.
I won't repeat what Councillor Lee has asked about, actually, but I obviously did visit the site, and what I felt was that there's very little on-street parking, a possibility in that road, but it is quite difficult getting out onto the main road, but that has nothing to do with this construction or development. And the only reason it's difficult is because the visibility of a hedge of a road, but that shouldn't make any difference to a planning application. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, members, any further comments? Yes, sorry.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you. Just picking up the car parking issue again. The site plan that's proposed clearly shows that 2 of the car parking spaces are being used in the garage. When I did my quiet recce through the other day, I couldn't help but wonder how the site will actually function, because realistically there will be more cars on site than what we're saying. And equally, the deliveries that go with houses. I mean, the average semi-detached house on a normal street, usually seems to attract at least 1, if not 2 or 3 deliveries from Amazon a day. I mean, if you've got the dreaded man with the van running up and down the road and he gets to the gate, what's he going to do? He's going to be sat there for 25, 30 seconds while the gate opens, into sight, out, back out. It's this intensification point, which I think we need some clarity on how it's actually going to work.
So we can add a condition requiring details of how deliveries are going to be made. There's quite some space within the centre of the front forecourt, and so there could be, if they provide a swept path analysis of how they're going to come in and out of the site, and that should address the deliveries issue.
Yes, please do.
I'm just not quite sure how that would work, though. I mean, if you're assuming there's going to be, we've already had it from Councillor Jeffcoat, that there are questions on how large the spaces are. I mean, I'm pretty dubious on the size, and I think they are questionable. And if there are cars, as again, Alex suggested that there's going to be no white lines, cars may be everywhere. Someone's going to drive inside, and then what? They're going to reverse back out through the gate, so they might not be able to get around. It's ultimately it's a front garden. I appreciate for quite a big house, but you're looking to have multiple vehicles coming in, turning around. It's just going to look like a bit of a clown show in my view, and I just think we need to just think very carefully how we avoid that. Thank you.
Right, any other members? Right, before we actually go to the vote, we've therefore got a suggestion of 2 further conditions. One being the submission of a construction management plan, and one being the submission of details of how deliveries are going to be made and the access in and out of the site. Members, are we all... Sorry? Removal of the... Oh, yes, and removal of the condition about the wheel washing. Yes, absolutely, I forgot about that one. Okay, so can we agree those changes in the conditions first? All those in favour of those changes? Thank you.
Unanimous.
Thank you very much. So therefore, going forward, with those additional conditions, the recommendation is that we approve with conditions, including the additional conditions and the removal of the wheel washing condition. All those in favour of approval, please show.
Unanimous.
Thank you. In that case, that planning permission has been granted. Thank you. Members, we are going to move swiftly on to item 9. This is, the site involved is Highlands Nursery off Hamlet Hill in Roydon. And I'm going to hand over in 2 minutes to Suki, who's going to present this application. It's no problem at all. No problem at all.
Okay. This application seeks retrospective permission for the change of use of an existing nursery outbuilding to Class EG3 light industrial use. The building is currently being used to manufacture UPVC windows. It's before members this evening as it has attracted at least 5 objections from neighbours and the Roydon Parish Council. Concerns raised are listed on page 46 of the agenda, including retrospective nature of that proposal, concerns with highways, pedestrian safety, traffic congestion, intensification of the site, flooding concerns, impact on the green belt, noise concerns. This slide shows the location of the site. The proposal will retain the existing access from Hamlet Hill. The nursery has an area, just get a pointer, sorry, of about 1.5 hectares, and apart from the outbuilding of which this application is a part, contains double glazing tanks and ancillary nursing buildings, 2 blocks of glass houses totaling an area of 0.7 hectares. The site was previously operated as a nursery, with the owner using the greenhouses to grow cucumbers, with ancillary use of the outbuildings for packing and storage. A public right-of-way runs from Hamlet Hill through the access road and north onto footpath 8. This footpath is shared with the vehicular access for Highlands Nursery. The applicant is not the owner of the access but does have access rights. Due to the difficult economic circumstances, the horticultural use has gone into abeyance. Therefore, the outbuilding outlined in red is currently surplus to requirements and has been rented out to a double glazing business. This planning application has been submitted as a result of an enforcement investigation. The business has been in operation on the site since March 2021. The application building has an internal area of 112 square metres and forms the southern end of a larger rectangular building situated on the western side of the applicant's nursery. There are 2 existing car parking spaces which are to be retained. The business employs 5 people. The proposed hours of operation are from 7:30 to 5:30 Monday to Friday and 7:30 to 1:30 on Saturday. A skip is being used for waste, plastic, glass and wood. This is collected and emptied every 3 weeks. This slide shows the existing views of the site. The building has been in situ for 50 years and is of a substantial construction. The forecourt of the building is made up of concrete hard standing. Given that the proposal is only for a change of use and there will be no change to the external appearance of the building, the proposal therefore complies with Greenbelt policy, as there will be no additional harm to the openness. The current use is described as proposed on this slide. The pre-existing horticultural use generated 17 average annual daily trips, and the current use generates 4. This is a reduction of 13 trips. The passenger car unit trips, which is amalgamation of the type of trips that are generated by each type of use, is reduced by 17, and the 7 a.m. peak hour vehicle trips and 5 p.m. peak hour trips is reduced by 5. As the proposed development is a betterment in terms of highway demand compared to the pre-existing horticultural use, so that is seen as a benefit, the Highway Authority has also raised no objections. A noise survey and assessment has been submitted. This slide shows the location of the sensitive receptors and the positioning of the noise monitoring equipment. The orange dots here and here indicate the monitoring positions, and the red dots represent the noise sensitive receptor locations, i.e. the residential dwellings. orange points 1 and so the red point 1 are the existing caravans on the site. Red point 2 is Belmont, the residential dwelling. Red point 3 is Locklash, and red point 4 is Highlands. Noise levels from the glass fitters workshop have been predicted by HA Acoustics. They found that the rating noise level at the caravans to the north of the site without mitigation is 40 decibels rating, which is 5 decibels above the background noise. The rating noise level at Belmont without mitigation is 29 decibels rating level, which is 6 decibels below the assessed background noise. The rating noise level at Locklash and the Highlands without mitigation is 28 decibels rating level, which is 7 decibels below the background noise levels. This is in accordance with the 2014 British Standard guidance and is an indication of the specific sound source having a no or to a low impact. The lower the rating level is relative to that measured by the background level, the less likely it is that the specific sound source will have an adverse impact. The findings demonstrate that the residential properties along Hamlet Hill are not adversely affected by the noise from the business. Only the caravan to the north is affected. The noise consultants have recommended that should complaints be received, then mitigation should be installed to protect the occupiers of the caravan. Mitigation could be a acoustic fence, which reduces the sound noise by 5 decibels, for example. Condition 6 is listed on page 51 on the agenda to require this to be provided. Given these results and the calculations they have made, they found that the predicted resultant noise levels from the proposed plant are reasonable and appropriate, and the relevant noise meet relevant noise criteria. Therefore, an adequate level of protection against noise for occupants of neighbouring residential dwellings is provided. EFDC noise team also raised no objections. Given that the proposal is not inappropriate development, will not have an adverse impact on neighbouring amenity or highway safety, and the proposal will bring back into use a former employment building, the proposal is considered acceptable by officers and as such has a recommendation for approval. Thank you, Madam Chairman. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. We have 2 speakers on this item. The first, an objector, Anthony Jones. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair. The property in question has been used without planning since without permission for some time now. Until a couple of years ago, the nursery was run by Tony Canalella, who was the father of the proposer, and it was always busy. It had oil heating, but one of the things that we noticed as neighbours was that when Tony died, the boiler and the pipework to heat the nurseries was removed. We since believe that this was the first stage of making the nursery unviable to run. Access is well known locally of Hamlet Hill. It's a very, very busy road, and the traffic that already uses it is far in excess of any normal country lane. We have in average, which we've done a survey, we have in average over 150 to 240 tonne lorries a day driving down there. Again, because of there's a lot of local nurseries which are pleading this case, and they're changing their business from nurserymen to logistics. They're building warehouses, and so we've got this extra load of traffic. It's also a rat run between Hoddesdon, Harlow and Epping. Bear with me, I'm not used to speaking.
Okay. You're doing okay.
The driveway in question that runs to the nursery is owned by Alan Jones, who is sitting upstairs, and on his deeds it is required by him to give access to the nursery. But it is not suitable for heavy traffic, since the glazing unit has been operating, there's been a regular flow of traffic throughout the day. I did hear the statement about what cars and what vans should be going down there, but just today we've had more than 20 vans going down there and 4 large lorries. And if you read that statement again, it's not even close to what we've had. This is today. And bringing that up, I'm going to skip a lot of this because I'm not going to get through it. The application for the times of operation, 7:30 in the morning, everybody along there except for one person is retired. This morning, by me and Mr Jones, who's upstairs, who's a witness, there was a lorry on the property at 6:45 this morning. This is not, I wouldn't say it's regular, but it's quite often, at least a couple of times a week. These lorries are very large, some of them in excess of 20 tonnes. The lane itself is a dirt track. It's not built for it. I've got a retaining boundary wall down the side of my house, which is on that lane, and it's been built for 22 years. In the last year, since it's been used, there is cracks coming everywhere. The road surface is dropping. We've got, I won't say potholes, we've actually got the surface of the tracks squashing down, you know, to a depth of 3, maybe 6 inches in places. That particular lane, as the young lady pointed out, the Roydon walkway runs through that lane as well. The lane only just about fits tight a lorry. That walkway, if anybody's down there, which there are, walkers, children, schools use it, they can't get through. And I'm afraid to say that the drivers that are using the lane don't mind their speed.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right, okay. Sorry. Okay. Right. I was going to say we have a ward councillor here, Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. And Chairman, I'm pleased that this application has come before committee this evening because we have a serious issue around Roydon Hamlet, Nazing, and wherever we've seen that the slow decline of the glasshouse industry, and the change in those areas is absolutely phenomenal. If you take time to drive in any of those areas, you can't walk anymore down Hamlet Hill. I've known Hamlet Hill well for nearly 40 years. My wife used to live in Hamlet Hill, so going back to when she was 16, you could walk down. My dad would drop me off at the top of Hamlet Hill, and you could safely walk down midway to where Havana used to be down there. You can't anymore. It's lethal. And we have got 44 tonnes plus destroying the road down there. In fact, my members scheme has been used time and time again to get potholes filled in Hamlet Hill. Only last week, and I'm already receiving reports that those potholes that were filled have been torn up already.
Councillor Whitbread, I'm really sorry. Can I interrupt you? No, I've made a mistake. Although I thought I'd looked very carefully, I'd ticked somebody off who hasn't spoken yet. So the applicant hasn't had a chance to speak. My fault entirely. I do apologise to Stephen Hayhurst, who's probably sitting there thinking, what on earth is going on?
I did wonder what was going on.
Absolutely. I am very sorry, Stephen. I do apologise, and thank you very much to Therese for pointing it out to me. Stephen, if you'd like to chat now, and then I'll go back to Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman.
Sincere apologies.
Thank you. Although this site is in the Greenbelt, it is well established that the change of use of existing buildings in the Greenbelt to employment uses is acceptable in principle in accordance with long-standing national planning policy as well as adopted local plan policy DM4. The accusation in the representations that the change of use amounts to industrialisation of the Greenbelt is completely unreasonable. As you've seen yourselves, it is a very small workshop measuring only 7 by 13 metres. The objectors' points about traffic are based on an incorrect assumption that the proposed use would result in an increase in traffic compared with the lawful horticultural use. The largest vehicle there now is normally a 7.5 tonne or 15 tonne truck, far smaller than the 40 tonne 12 wheelers
that ran when the commercial nursery was in operation. As has been accepted, the applicant has a full right of way along the access. The site access has been used to serve the nursery for at least 50 years, and in the last 20 years, that would normally have involved a large HGV visiting the site twice a day. Our traffic experts demonstrated that the replacement of the lawful horticultural use with this small workshop has resulted in a significant reduction in traffic flow, and your highway experts agree with them. I agree that the poor condition of the road on Hamlet Hill and the speed of traffic along it should be looked at by the relevant authorities, but it would be completely disproportionate and unfair to refuse this one small change of use, which does in fact result in significantly less traffic than the previous nursery use. Just to make it absolutely clear, contrary to what the objectors say, the roller shutter door on the eastern side of this building was wide open when our noise experts measured the noise emitted from it. Their report lists in detail the various activities that took place when they were on site and the noise level recorded by each activity. The assertion by the objectors that the report was carried out in a week when the tenants purposely did not use the workshop is completely untrue and clearly inconsistent with the detailed evidence provided by the highly qualified, reputable professionals at HA Acoustics who wrote the report. It is also important to note that your own in-house professional noise experts found nothing wrong with our consultants' work, and that the resident in the caravan who lives closest to the building supports the granting of planning permission. However, we would be happy to provide the noise mitigation that's been suggested. The other suggested conditions to control operating hours and to prevent change to other less acceptable uses, we think would give the council sufficient tight control over any possible future changes, and therefore I would ask you all to support this application.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Whitbread. Oh, could you turn your mic off, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't go over what I've previously said.
Thank you.
What I will go on to say, of course, is, and I agree with some of what Mr Hayhurst says, that the 7.5 tonne restriction that is in place in Hamlet Hill is badly enforced by the police. We've tried numerous times to get Essex Police to enforce, along with having conversations with highways as well, and it's a constant frustration. I'm surprised that highways haven't recognised the fact within their report that we actually have a local highways panel scheme pending funding for traffic calming in Hamlet Hill and other pieces of work to be done as well. With regards to the conditions within this report, I strongly support the conditions to reduce the hours of operation if members are minded to support this application, and I think there should be a very strong condition on Saturday operation as well. We have got numerous businesses down in this area, and it's not just this particular one, but we have got to bear in mind the ongoing impact of many former glass houses and former farms now turning to this type of industry, and it is becoming more and more difficult for residents who live in that area to actually enjoy their own environment. We are spoiling this area by allowing these changes constantly to go ahead. There are more in the pipeline, and I think we have to be very mindful of it. I can only ask that your committee this evening takes into account the feelings of residents, which is strong, and they believe that there is too much of a cumulative impact going on in this area, but I strongly recommend the conditions that you have here, particularly on the timings. And again, we do need to bear in mind when we're looking at these that the fact you may have a 7.5 tonne restriction, but it's not enforced properly by Essex Police.
Thank you. Members, again, I'd like to thank members who did manage to attend the site visit last Friday. I think we were all concerned in terms of the traffic on Hamlet Hill. However, we do need to look and focus on the differences and any change this is going to cause. Remember, this has got a current legal use of a lawful horticultural use and the traffic that will be generated by a substantially larger business. And we do have to bear that in mind. So it's not as if it's like a new application, it is a change of use. Okay, with that said, I'd like to open it up for discussion, please. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. I think it is retrospective. None of us like it, but it should make no difference to our decision. We are only dealing with this small workshop, which is, and it's an employment use, which we desperately need. I think on the hours conditions, I was going to suggest instead of 7:30, it's 8:30, which gives them another hour in bed, maybe. That's deliveries as well as open to customers, as it says. But apart from that, I think I will be supporting this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to clarify that, were you suggesting 8:30 just Saturdays or Mondays to Fridays as well? Councillor Dadd, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I too was very interested in the site visit and appalled at the traffic conditions, and I think it's really such a big shame that our horticultural industry is going to the wall. I agree that there should be a change in conditions of operation, but I think that it's unrealistic to expect a firm that's trying to do things in a whole day to actually not start till 8:30, and I think 8 o'clock would be more reasonable. After all, we can have our refuse collections from 6:30 in the morning. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Yes, I think perhaps 8 o'clock might be a fair compromise. If they're expecting to get windows out and to customers for an early start, I think let's try for 8 o'clock. I think it's Councillor Lee.
Mine is actually almost the same thing, but having had windows, that the men were there at about 7 in the morning because they've got to take them out and get them put back in a day.
Yeah.
So it's not realistic saying that they can't go in and out until
That's
late.
very true.
And I would have still left it that at 7:30. That's myself. I mean, I live in a busy road with a school and everything else, so
I think that's a very valid point. Yeah, absolutely, very valid point. It would, it could limit them too much.
If you're having windows in, you don't want them turning up about 10 o'clock because they've only been able to collect the windows and they can't get it finished in a day. So that's my argument there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, councillors? Councillor Morris.
So, yeah, could I just cover the service management plan? Because I think the restriction on traffic is going to be crucial for that SMP to specify the frequency and type of vehicle that's going to be used. But I had a question about, would it be enforced? Do we know how it would be enforced if there's a service management plan?
So when we get a complaint, the enforcement officers will visit the site and to see if it's occurring. Obviously, if a complainant were to note down times and help evidence that, then we can, and then we can say it's a breach of condition and take action through our enforcement team to prevent them from doing that.
Okay, thank you. Right. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bedford. Thank you.
Thank you. I've listened intently to the questions around timings, and I have to say the 8 o'clock suggestion to me was probably the correct answer you should be going to for a condition. What I would say is, Councillor Lee, that most window fitters pick up their windows the day before the job, late in the afternoon, so that they're on site for 7:30 in the morning. You'll still get them there nice and early in the morning. Don't be worried about that. They just have to collect them later in the day.
Okay. Right. That's a very valid point. Right. Any other speakers? Anybody want to say anything? Right. In that case, can we first of all vote on this condition? If I could take the suggestion of that the times are changed from 07:30 to 0800 hours, Monday to Friday, and on Saturdays. All those in favour of that change in that condition, please show.
Unanimous.
Thank you. In that case, members, there is a recommendation to approve this application with the conditions in the report and with that amendment to that condition. All those in favour of approving this application, please show.
Unanimous, Chairman. Oh, sorry, 8, Chairman.
Thank you. Those against? And abstentions?
1 abstention.
Thank you. In that case, that application has been granted. Thank you. Okay. Members, I am now going to stand down as chair for the next item, and Councillor Williamson is going to step up as chair. Can I suggest that we take a very quick 4-minute comfort break at the same time, please? Thank you. Well, why 4? 5? 5. Why did I say 4? Quick. Me too. Don't worry.
Apologies. It was in the report, but no worries. But the previous scheme, the approved scheme, there was the lack of car parking on the site, and therefore it was made up by visitors' car parking spaces. But with this current scheme, each dwelling meets the parking standards by Essex County Council, and therefore, the 5 visitor parking spaces is considered sufficient for this proposed scheme.
Councillor Ramos.
Thank you, Chairman. It's understandable that in a small village, a development of 42 houses would raise concerns. It may not in a big urban area, you wouldn't say, but certainly in places like Stapleford Abbots, where there are not very many houses, will have a significant impact on the village. And you have heard from the representatives here this evening their concerns about various aspects. I have to say that having looked at this plan and compared it with the previous plan, I thought this was an improvement, as Councillor Jones said and others. And like everybody else, I couldn't work out why on earth they were moving the bus stop where they were moving it to. It just seemed rather strange. Overall, I think I would say, yes, please listen to the concerns which could be addressed with conditions, but overall I would have thought that this was a better option than the extant approval.
Sorry, Councillor Jones, can I just come back to you regarding the parking? In the previous scheme there was 95 parking spaces, and this scheme provides 100, so there's 5 extra in comparison to the approved scheme.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any comments from members? Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Chairman. I took some time last night to go through this, as I was late called to come to this committee this evening, so I thought I'd better do my homework, then subsequently left my book at home. However, I did read everything and I went through it with a fine-tooth comb, because I know this is an important decision for the residents and obviously for the development in the district. And when you look at it holistically, I have to agree with both the councillors that are here this evening representing their area. I also note the comments made by the objectors about air pollution, etc., and light pollution. And I think we have to take this on balance. This is an allocated site within our local plan. It already has permission for 42 houses, and it is still going to be 42 units going on the site. The sewage facilities, I seem to read in there, had all been addressed with no objections. The gas authority, when I read about their comments in there initially, I think there was some concern from Cadent, and then that was subsequently addressed with a further review. The badgers, bats and owls resident on the current site, well, they'll tend to move off or move round, and we know there are protections in place for badgers, etc., and that's not really a planning consideration that we have to take into account this evening. The loss of the one-bedroom properties, I made a note here that, yes, that is a bit of a shame there are no one-bedrooms, but overall the scheme is better suited to better family units as opposed to one-bedroom units. And we do have a lot of other one-bedroom units throughout the district, so it's not as if we haven't got a lot of one-bedroom availability anywhere else in the district. I think that's about all. The only thing I did think about was perhaps, I agree with Councillor Jones about possibility of trying to get the bus stop moved, and I also think that I've made a note here somewhere. The times of hours of operation. I think it would be unrealistic to put an 8 o'clock start on for this particular site as it is a construction site. I can't remember reading in there about wheel washing, but that is normally a standard condition on this one. Thank you for confirming that. And as far as I'm concerned, I think this is really, although some residents won't like it, this is actually 42 for 42 units with planning permission already granted. It does seem a better scheme than the original scheme when you look at it in its totality. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Coughlin.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with everything that's so far been said by everyone. Only two things. I was going to suggest that we might add an informative that removes the permitted development rights going forwards on the scheme. I don't know if anyone, officer-wise, will pick me up if that is in there or not. And also the other point, given we spent, whatever it was, 45 minutes talking about renewable energy, whether or not there's any allowance on the scheme for solar panels to be added to any of the roofs. There's condition, is it condition 3, which is whether that would be sufficient to allow a bit of additional discussion on that point.
Okay. I think the permitted development is condition 38 and they have been removed. If the officers could confirm that that's the case, condition 30.
Yeah.
And any comment on solar panels? We've got air pumps, air heat pumps.
So they've got air heat pumps and electric charging points. We can put another condition requiring details of solar panels if it's possible to require it.
Sorry for missing the condition. No. And are we okay with condition 21 that is about the lighting? The lighting design scheme shall be submitted and approved in writing. I think we've made it clear we'd like low level and low density, and that would come under the condition 21. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I think that's it. Any other? Oh, Councillor Dadd, sorry. Councillor Dadd, and then Councillor Whitehouse, then Councillor Dadd.
Yes, I was also going to ask about having the condition about low-level lighting, but I wanted to actually just query something that the objectors had commented about the attenuation ponds or tanks, and I see on number 28 condition, it does say something about infiltration test in line with BRE 365, and if infiltration is found to be unviable, the runoff rates from the site should be limited to 2.7 metres per second. Are we assured by our drainage people that the point taken up by the objector has been met within that condition, please?
Yes.
Yes, so we've consulted SUDS, Essex County Council, and also the land drainage team for the council, and that's the condition that they proposed for this scheme.
Councillor Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, a couple of issues I was going to mention have been raised. I mean, clearly the conditions are crucial here because they will determine whether or not a lot of the concerns raised are dealt with or not. I did want to ask about the where have we got the the lighting is one of them. Yet, the shared ownership and the affordable housing. I mean, I note the changes to the affordable housing provision because of Part M, and I can see that that makes some sense. Doesn't explain in the report why we've accepted doubling the amount of shared ownership, which is generally a sort of less desirable way of addressing housing need than housing for rent. And I'd be grateful for some clarification on that. And the section 106s, I can see some of those values have been changed to reflect changes in circumstances. Some of those have stayed the same, despite inflation. It's just a fact that things like the air quality mitigation, it's a fixed rate, regardless of costs. Okay.
Yes, so the air mitigation strategy was adopted in. The air mitigation strategy was adopted in 2021, and the figures were fixed as was agreed in that strategy, so there would be no change. Everything else is probably index linked, and that's why there's changes. I'm just checking regarding your question on affordable housing. I think it was agreed by the affordable housing officer,
Yes.
that the 50-50 split was acceptable.
Yeah, I got it was agreed. I was asking why, or
I
what
don't
the rationale behind it.
No, we don't know. We
Yeah.
don't know. Sorry, the applicant and the affordable housing officer has agreed to this mix, but there's no, we don't have a reason behind why. But it's acceptable and meet policy requirements.
Councillor Bedford.
Yeah, you might not have had this question before, but I think you might even have to go back to the agent to ask. I'm just wondering, what is the energy efficiency rating that's going to be applied to the new housing that's going in? Are they going to be B1, B2, or are these going to be A-rated houses at A1? Thank you.
Do the officers have a... Can we go back to the applicant? Do you have that information?
Hi. Yeah, so basically that isn't determined as part of planning. So what we do is when we go get our building reg certificates, we have detailed SAP assessments that are taken. So that takes into account the windows used, the fabric used, all the materials. And it's at that later stage when the technical drawings are done that we're able to get a rating. In terms of Hill products, they range typically from an A to a B in terms of the SAP ratings and the EPCs.
Thank you.
That's sufficient, Chairman. I just wanted to know they were range A to B going forward.
Thank you. Any other member? Anybody else? We have... So I'm going to go back to find the recommendations pages of this. Yeah, so the recommendation is that planning permission be granted prior completion of a legal agreement, etc. Members, all those in approval, please show.
Sorry, Chairman. Can I just clarify, are we adding any conditions?
I think all the conditions are covered. The lighting condition is covered.
So 21 is just amended to add low light, level light and intensity rating.
Yeah, okay. So, members, condition 20...
solar panel, sorry, yeah.
Condition 21 is amended to show low-level lighting, and we're going to consider the possibility of installing solar panels. Are we happy with those changes?
I don't know how members feel. I did ask if it could be low level and low intensity lighting.
Low level and low density. Yeah. Members, we're happy with those changes to conditions. Please show.
Unanimous.
We have a recommendation to grant. All members, please show in approval of that.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you. That has been granted. We will now resume the proper chair instead of the improper.
I like the look of Holly's email that just came through, the VJ Street policy.
Did you have a proposal and a seconder? Did we have a proposal and a seconder?
Apologies, members. We need a proposer and a seconder for the changes to the conditions. Yeah. Councillor Bedford, do we have a seconder for the condition changes? Sorry. We've several. Councillor Arat. Thank you.
Oh, who was the proposer?
Councillor Bedford. It might be a bit warm.
Hang on, Chair.
You didn't have a proposer and a seconder on the motion either.
Sorry. Apologies, members. It's been a while since I sat in this chair. We need a proposer for granting, Councillor Bedford, and a seconder for granting, Councillor Ardekani. Thank you. Thank you. Well done.
I'm not sure. Did Teresa get that? Did you get that? I think just.
Is that all right?
Don't tell me you're escaping.
Yeah.
Don't blame me.
She had a very exciting email from Holly pop up about the VJ Street policy. Sounds fun. gives me some work, 'cause it means I've got to get I've got a Second World War Jeep, which was it was at Arnhem when Market Garden apparently it goes out once a year. Get it running again.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Microphone.
Yours is on now.
Sorry. I try and say this as quickly as I can. I know times are running out. It's before members tonight as it's received an objection from Epping Town Council, which is listed on page 91. I won't list out everything given the time restriction. The site is located in the is outside of the green belt. The existing house is 1.5 to 2 story. The existing is located within the southern section of a spacious site. There's around 34 metres between the side flank of the existing house and the northern edge of the site. So you can see that it's a large plot in an area of housing which is predominantly small scale and semi-detached housing. Members can see the adjoining northern boundary of 6 semi-detached houses fronting Oak Glade, which have a density of development which is similar to that of which is proposed in this application. The application site is located on the eastern side of Coopersale Common. The property is a detached dwelling situated within a 0.25 hectare site. You can see the variety of housing of various ages. It's adjacent to the parish hall to the south. The site's set lower than the road, and there's an established hedge which encompasses the site boundaries. This slide shows a photo looking northwards towards the southeastern boundary of the site from Coopersale Common. The photo to your right is a public view of the western boundary of the site, and you can see 6 Oak Glade in that image too. The images were taken in 2020, and the trees in the centre of the site have since been removed. This slide shows the proposed ground floor plan. The blue line indicates, if you can just see it there, the previously approved scheme under EPF 45 of 22 for 3 houses approved by the East Area Planning Committee on the 5th of October 2022. That permission is still extant. This plan shows the ground floors of the units. Each house is a 3-bedroom semi-detached house. All units have internal areas which meet national space standards. 2 car parking spaces are proposed for each unit. Amenity provision also meets policy requirements. The access arrangements are the same as that previously approved. The slide shows the first floor plan embedded into the site plan. There's a minimum gap of 3 metres from the northern flank of plot 1 and the boundary of the northern boundary. The distance between the side flank and of the plot 1 and the side flank of 6 Oak Glade is 5.8 metres. This is 1 metre less than the extant permission. Number 6 has a bathroom window facing the application site. Condition 11 on page 100 of the agenda also requires that the first floor side flank windows be obscure glazed. It is therefore considered that the impact on the neighbouring amenity is not excessively worse than the approved scheme. In fact, there's an improvement to the residents of 98 to 102 Coopersale Common to the west, as the gap between the new homes and these neighbours will increase between 1.4 metres and 4.3 metres. As the new scheme is set further east than the approved scheme. The land to the southeast is sensitive triple SI land. This slide shows you the landscape plan. You can see ground floor rear projections will have green roofs. The gardens predominantly will be covered in lawn, and 3 new trees will be planted in the gardens. Hedgerows will also be retained and upgraded around the perimeter of the site and between the side gaps of plots 2 and 3 and between 4 to 5. The B&G protection zone will contain 14 new native trees, shrubs, ferns, wildflower, meadow planting. In addition, bat boxes in trees, bird boxes in trees, and invertebrate boxes, hedgehog holes in the fence, and log piles with hedgehog domes are proposed. The garages within the extant scheme have now been omitted. The overall footprint of the new scheme is 26 square metres less than the approved scheme. The massing of the new scheme is the same as the approved scheme. The total built area, including the hardscaping, is 30 square metres less than the approved. The provision of hardscaping is 3.8 square metres less. The loss of the existing hedgerow will be the same as the approved scheme. The landscaping scheme involves the retention of mature hedges and other vegetation, and additional planting will be provided, plus the wildlife area. There's also 7 additional trees within the buffer area. The B&G assessment calculates that there will be a net gain of 35% over and above the existing situation. This is a benefit of the scheme. The 6 semi-detached dwellings will sit comfortably within the plot and are reflective of the pattern of development within the wider area. This slide shows the sectional view of the proposed development. The blue dashed line shows the position of the approved scheme. You can see the proposal will remove the garages, and the front elevation is positioned 5.9 metres back from the front elevation of the approved scheme. The maximum height of the dwellings is similar to the approved scheme. This slide shows the front and rear elevations of the proposal in comparison with the approved scheme. The top line includes the hedge, which will be maintained to its current length. The second row shows the front elevations, and the bottom row shows the rear elevations. To conclude, the density of the development is the same as that at Oakglade. Impact to neighbouring amenity will not be excessively greater than the approved scheme. No more hedgerow will be lost than that already approved. The proposal provides sufficient parking. A buffer zone has been provided, which includes additional trees and wildlife features, which will improve the biodiversity of the site. The Highways Authority raises no objections to the scheme. It also will make an efficient use of the site and will provide 3 additional dwellings outside of the green belt. Given that the council is a presumption authority, the government requires that the council give extra weight to approving this application. The proposal therefore has an officer recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chairman. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much indeed. We have 2 speakers on this item. Firstly, on behalf of the Town Council, Epping Town Mayor Sherry McCready. Good evening.
Thank you, Chairman. You have details of the Town Council's strong objection before you in the report. The Town Council does not believe this development is appropriate to the street scene and character of this rural village setting. We would have accepted the replacement of the main family house should a similar dwelling on a like-to-like basis, and not the proposed development of 6 dwellings. This is clearly overdevelopment of the site in terms of size and density, and has an undesirable visual impact and dominance on the street scene. The design of the proposed dwellings will not make a positive contribution on the village. The site is also in close proximity to the Greenbelt and Essex Way, and as such, this application is not sensitive to this location and its potential impact on the environment. In the Town Council's objection, we also comment on a potential highways issue, which I hope the committee will take this into account in its deliberations. I hope the committee will support the Town Council's view that any development in Coopersell should be sensitive to the rural setting of this village. And if we agree to this development, it will be extremely detrimental to that setting. May we suggest the development should be reconsidered by the applicant and a scheme more appropriate in terms of design and density brought forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And our second speaker is the applicant's agent, Danny Simmons.
Good evening, committee. I'm Danny Simmons from RPS and I'm the agent acting on behalf of the applicant. Committee, this site has a live planning permission for 3 units approved in January 2023, so recently. This current application is in effect a revision to the earlier scheme, but has the benefit of making the most effective use of the site, bringing forward much needed housing. Whilst the number of units has increased to 6, the effect of the proposals is materially the same, albeit the new application brings forward comparative benefits. And in particular, as described by your officer, the new scheme is smaller and provides for greater areas of landscaping and increased biodiversity net gain. Also, the new homes will be smaller than those approved, being semi-detached 3-bed units rather than the detached 5-bed units as part of the previous scheme, much better suited to meet local demand in Epping and the local area. With regard to highways, again, as confirmed by your officer, there is no objection from County Highways. I've listened carefully to the comments made by the speaker from the Town Council, and with respect, there was no reference to the January 2023 permission, and there was no reference to the comparative merits of the proposals. Indeed, I am confused about the Town Council's position with regard to these proposals. And I think at least a few of you were present at the October 2022 East Area Subcommittee, which considered the previous application. And at that committee, the Town Council speaker conceded that she would not have appeared if the applicants had explained the proposals to the Town Council, the implication being that they would not have objected. Accordingly, this time round, I wrote to the Town Council offering to meet them, but unfortunately, I never received a reply. This is not necessarily directed to tonight's speaker, but again, with respect, it is clear that the Town Council's objection is not based on valid planning grounds, and in my opinion, should be given no weight. In summary, these proposals have evolved since the earlier permission, bringing forward benefits, maximising the use of the site in accordance with your local plan. As clear from the officer's report, these proposals have overriding merit and should be supported. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, ward members, Councillor Whitehouse and, and then Councillor, thank you. Councillor Whitehouse first.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, as has been mentioned, some of us have seen a similar application beforehand. There's no doubt this is an intensification, of activity on the site, and that's something that needs to be balanced against the other factors. I mean, I don't see it having a greater impact on the street scene, given the volume of the units is very similar to the volume of the existing consent. Where I do think the impact, or the biggest thing I think will have an impact on the street scene, is probably the use of materials and so on. And I think it is important that that's properly controlled by condition to make sure that it is any building does happen to a good standard. And some of the other things, I think the conditions are crucial as well. I mean, I do have concerns about the amount of hard landscaping that's still there, but those were concerns I had about the previous application as well. The hedgerow is an issue that the officer raised in her presentation and was an issue last time this was discussed as well. And I'm assuming that the retention of that is deliverable through the landscaping condition, but it would be helpful to have that confirmed. And one of my slight concerns was in condition 18.1, it talks about a minimum width of the access, but not a maximum width. And I'm slightly concerned that that width could go and take more hedgerow than is currently anticipated. It'd be helpful to have some reassurance or some comment on that, and if that condition needs to be amended or not. The other issue is about the maintenance of the BNG area. I see there's got to be a fence there permanently in place, which presumably is to prevent it becoming part of the garden and amenity land. But I'm not clear beyond that, what provision there is for maintenance, even if it's fairly straightforward maintenance, like cutting back encroachment and so on.
There isn't a maintenance plan, from my understanding, so it will be just left to grow and grow, yeah. Sorry, yeah. So it's meant to be wild, so whatever's natural happens with it. It's close to the forest. I'm sure that there will be some sort of cross-fertilisation, and it's probably best left alone and nothing touched to keep the benefits of the biodiversity features within it.
Could you just comment on the point raised about in condition 18, that the access they give a minimum access but not a maximum access? Is that norm, or would you expect a...
Well, what I can do is, if members allow that to be delegated, is I can speak to Highways and ask them what the maximum is, and then just reword that condition to include the maximum.
Makes sense, thank you. Councillor Holly Whitbread, I think you indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to note, as the county councillor for this area, I didn't want to repeat any of what Councillor Whitehouse said, but I just wanted to note that this area is going to be subject to a safety scheme. The county councillor currently investigating this, and hopefully it will be implemented soon. So I think it would be worthy for committee to consider having conversations with county, or the applicant to consider having conversations with county. I do actually agree this is probably a better use of the site overall. I don't think it has much impact on the site visually, and I would say I don't think on this occasion the town council's objections hold much planning merit, but I would say that this is a particular hotspot in terms of highways issues, and any liaison between the county council, although I'm mindful they didn't make a direct objection, there have been significant issues here, so liaison between the applicant, officers and the county council would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, up to members, please. Anybody? Oh, Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Chair. There's only one query that I've got, which is conditions. When we did the site visit the other day, I'll leave it for the applicant to confirm. I think there's a couple of asbestos structures on the site. I don't know whether or not they've been picked up, and whether or not we can have a condition in place that they are assessed, and if they are found to be asbestos, that a suitable strategy is put in place to make sure they are disposed of in the correct manner.
We do have a standard informative for that. I think it's also covered in the contamination condition. So,
just don't want to see it dumped in the forest.
So because it's asbestos is usually covered by the Health and Safety Executive, we can, and I know that's usually standard. Land contamination team put that issue on as an informative. So, would you want it as a condition or an informative?
I mean, I believe it is asbestos. The applicant might be able to confirm if it is, I think.
I accept that it is asbestos, but because it's the legislation which controls it is outside of planning legislation, can we put it on as an informative rather than a condition?
Can Councillor Williamson just come in at this point?
If any asbestos is found in any building that's going to be worked on at all, Health and Safety Executive come into play, and it's very, very clear what has to be done.
So I think that would include in the informative. Okay. Any other further comments, members? Right, members, in that case, we do have a recommendation to grant planning permission. Can I just confirm that we are happy to delegate to the planning officers, if we can delegate consultation about the maximum width of the access, and that condition 18 to be changed appropriately, and the land contamination in terms of the asbestos could be covered by the informative directive. With that said, members, all those in favour of granting permission, please show.
You've just asked for an asbestos informative and delegate to officers.
Right, we want to vote on that.
We need a proposer.
Oh, sorry.
I
thought we were just adding to it, sorry.
No, that's all right. No, that's fine. But we need to propose and a second.
And second, we do indeed, yes.
Before we vote, please.
We do indeed. So that's proposed by Councillor Williamson, seconded by Councillor Stocker. Sorry, we're getting late. All those in favour of those additional comment? No, it's not additional conditions, it's addition to existing conditions.
Unanimous.
Thank you. In that case, members, going forward with that understanding, all those in favour of granting planning permission, please show.
Propose and second first, please.
I thought it was because I'm voting on the approval. I think in terms of continuity, I think all the others I've just asked you to vote on the recommendation. So I think I'm all right. We will discuss it after. It's, so all those in favour of the officer recommendation, which is to grant planning permission, please show.
Unanimous.
Thank you. That planning permission has been granted. Right, our final application for this evening is item 12. Members, I do apologise for the lateness of this meeting, but I don't think we've been able to curtail anything any shorter. But it's important that we do just carry on for this final application, please. So it's item 12, EPF 2389/24. And the site is 3 Woodbury Down in Epping. And again, thank you to people who attended a site visit there as well. Okay, over to you, Siki. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, Madam Chairman. This application seeks permission for the demolition of the existing dwelling and detached garage, erection of four-bedroom dwellings with associated landscaping, private amenity areas, car parking and 3 new vehicular accesses across the existing footway. It's before members today because it's received 5 objections from neighbours. The concerns raised include character and appearance is not in keeping with the surrounding area, excessive bulk and scale, overdevelopment, loss of neighbouring amenity, harm to highway safety, parking disruption, harm during construction phase. This slide shows an aerial and bird's eye view of the site. It's located on the northwestern side of Woodbury Down. Some of the pre-existing trees have been cut down. Whilst the application site contains a single detached dwelling within a large garden, the surrounding area is predominantly made up of higher density semi-detached dwellings. The existing dwelling at the application site is 2-storey. The top left photo is the front elevation. The top middle photo is taken from the garden towards number 1 Woodbury Down. The top right photo is taken from the garden towards 5 Woodbury Down. The bottom left photo is the rear elevation of the house. The bottom middle photo is the view of the house from Lindsay Street. You can see that the house is positioned quite close to the highway boundary. The bottom right is the view of the garden towards the properties within Barnfield. This slide shows views of the northwestern side of Woodbury Down. It's made up of mid-20th century semi-detached homes. Number 5 Woodbury Down has an extended loft area to provide additional accommodation. The distance between the the bottom view is of the southeastern side of Woodbury Down and is made up of interwar semi-detached dwellings. Generally, gaps between properties is around 1.5 metres. This slide shows the proposed elevations. Each pair would be symmetrical with the main entrance halls on the outer sides, and each would have front projections that would add interest and introduce some articulation to reduce some of the bulk of the dwellings. Across the front elevations, you can see that the houses have a traditional scale design and layout. All the dwellings will provide living accommodation at ground floor, and at first floor there would be 3 bedrooms, one of which has an ensuite bathroom, and there's a separate family bathroom at first floor level. Then in the roof slope will be the main bedroom with an ensuite. There's roof lights to the front and dormer windows to the rear. The internal areas of the homes meet national described space standards. This slide shows the proposed site plan. The orange dashed line shows the position of the existing house and garage on the site. You can just see it there. You can see that houses within plots 1 and 2 sit within a similar position. The dwellings with plots 3 and 4 act as infill continuation of plots 2 and reflect the semi-detached homes within the wider area. There is a minimum gap of 3.3 metres between the western boundary and the side flank of plot 1. This gap increases to 7.59 metres nearer the front. The side flank of the main house at 1 Woodbury Down is over 10 metres away. There's a 3.4 metre gap between plots 2 and 3. A total gap of 4.6 metres will be provided between the side flank of the dwelling within plot 4 and 5 Woodbury Down. The upper floor window distance between 5 Barnfield and the application site is 38 metres away. There's sufficient parking, so each unit has 2 car parking spaces, and there's the garden spaces also meets current standards. This slide shows the existing and proposed street views. The orange dashed line shows the position of the refuse scheme under reference EPF 1083 of 24. That application was refused on the grounds that it was cramped form of development. The key differences between this scheme and the previously refused scheme is that the ridge heights of both pairs of dwellings have been reduced by 450 millimetres, with the ridge height of the more westerly pair set 500 metres below the ridge, and the easterly pair that would be adjacent to number 5 Woodbury Down. The width of the pairs of dwellings have been reduced by a total of 1.4 metres per pair. The ridge height of the pairs of dwellings adjacent to number 5 Woodbury Down is now lower than the ridge height of the pair of dwellings comprising number 5 and 7 Woodbury Down. These changes better reflect the slope in the land and the pattern of development in the area. The site is outside of Greenbelt in an area of low flood risk. It's also walking distance from amenities. The location is therefore sustainable, and the proposal will provide housing to meet local need. The application property has no heritage protection. The proposed homes do not extend beyond the position of the existing house, and it will replace and are in keeping with the spatial characteristics of the neighbouring property. This overcomes the previous reasons for refusal. Neighbouring properties are sufficiently distant to ensure that they won't be affected. There's sufficient parking, and so for these reasons, and disruption during construction can be managed by condition. It therefore has a recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chairman. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Members, we have 3 speakers on this item. Our first speaker and objector, John Sewell. Good evening. Thank you for your patience.
This current application is the 3rd one in a series. Apart from some minor changes, the developer has not listened to the objections of the town and district councils and certainly hasn't addressed the concerns of the local people, 29 objectors. There's been no overshadowing survey carried out. There is no daylight report assessment. That's not been carried out. There is a biodiversity survey. That was carried out, but not before the developer ripped out every tree, every shrub and every hedgerow. The planning officer said that some trees were felled. That's not true. Every single tree was taken down from that site. There's not a single tree left. These proposals now boast that the new development would deliver, quote, deliver a net biodiversity gain. Well, yes, only because every living thing has been ripped out. There is no independent parking stress survey, so the parking statements in this proposal have no evidence to support them whatsoever. One statement reads that the sharp bend into Woodbury Down next to the junction with Lindsay Street is, quote, a natural traffic calming measure which would ensure a safer flow of traffic and safer parking. This is a joke. Safer parking will have 8 driveways next to each other, with vehicles parked right up to the pavement. Imagine children on their way to school. We have a lot of children going to school with their parents, walking past these vehicles. It would be so dangerous that it'd be like playing Russian roulette. The house nearest to Lindsay Street has been crammed in, so its parking space is not in keeping with the rest of the parking on that development. The space runs parallel to the pavement. For the car to leave, it would need to reverse along the pavement a distance before reversing into the road on a blind bend. Can you think of anything more dangerous? Parking in Woodbury Down will become a major challenge, with overflow parking from the recent development in Lindsay Street, where the parking survey suggested that overflow parking use Woodbury Down, the guest parking of these new houses, and the loss of curb parking due to these 8 new driveways. I dread to think of an emergency vehicle trying to gain access. The proposed new houses do not follow the existing building line of numbers 5, 7 and 9. They didn't in the first 2 applications, and in this application they're now 3/4 of a metre nearer the road. Due to the close proximity to the road, they would dominate. They would look out of place, looming over other buildings. The proposal states that they would fit in with other semi-detached houses in Woodbury Down. This is not so. There are no other houses like this in Woodbury Down. 3-storey townhouse design, built with no front gardens, so close to the road. The overall site is too small for 4 houses.
If you can
look at
wind
the
up now,
plan view
please.
in your papers,
You do need to wind up. Thank you.
opposite the proposed development are numbers 2A, 2 and 4, 3 houses in exactly the same width. They're putting in 4 new dwellings. The evidence shows clear overdevelopment of the site. We'd ask you to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Our second speaker, Epping Town Mayor Cherry McCready.
Thank you, Chairman. The committee will have seen other applications on this site. The Town Council has objected to those applications and now strongly object to this application. The committee is aware of residents' objections and concerns regarding the development of this land and the potential loss of the existing house on this site. The Town Council consider the application before you as clearly overdevelopment. In particular, we object to the loss of this house, which has strong historical connections with the community. Its loss is cultural vandalism by the developer, and we believe should be rejected by the committee. The development would have a detrimental impact on the street scene and is not in keeping with the neighbouring and nearby properties. The proposed development is closer to the street boundary and further forward than neighbouring properties. It will result in a loss of amenity for neighbouring properties in respect of overshadowing and overlooking. On design, the proposed houses are, in the Town Council's view, poorly designed, lack any architectural merit and give the impression of overcrowding in the space available. The Town Council has also commented on highways and environmental concerns associated with this development. I hope the committee can also take these issues into account. We hope the committee can reject this inappropriate application for development. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And our final speaker for this evening, the applicant's agent, John Durbin. Good evening.
Sorry.
Chairman and members of the Planning Committee, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak at your meeting. We're very pleased to see that the Planning Officer has recommended the application for approval. Given the complex planning history of the site, it's undoubtedly the case that your officers would not have lightly arrived at that decision to recommend approval of planning permission. In arriving at this recommendations, your officers took account of the benefit of new dwellings on this site, new additional dwellings on this site, and the benefit they will have on the local community. New dwellings will bring additional population to Epping, helping support local businesses and the general vibrancy of the town. As you know, there's a high-level government imperative to deliver new dwellings, and the development of this site will also relieve pressure to relax greenbelt boundaries. Collectively, these smaller sites make a significant contribution to the overall supply of housing. Indeed, government guidance explicitly recognises the importance of small and medium-sized sites as set out within the new MPPF, which you discussed earlier this evening. So, in that sort of very positive policy context, I just want to address some of the specific objections from neighbours and, as you've just heard, from the Town Council. So in terms of overdevelopment, we've gone to great lengths to show how putting 4 dwellings on this site would reflect the character and scale of neighbouring built form. And I particularly draw you to the front elevation street scene that was shown earlier by the planning officer, showing that the height of the dwellings is similar to the neighbouring properties. So also the site plan that was set out will show clearly the separation distances between the existing dwellings, and also opposite the site on the southeast side of the road, which we saw the photograph of, those dwellings are closer together than those that are now proposed. Also, the building line of these new dwellings would wholly respect on the existing on the northwest side of this road. The fact that more than adequate car parking with landscaping and substantial gardens would be provided with this development all points towards a reasonable scale of development having regard to the character of this locality. Indeed, as is noted in the officer report, this scheme substantially increases the space about built form. And in terms of the loss of the existing building, again the Town Council comments are respectfully noted, but it is neither a statutorily listed building nor is it locally listed, and therefore there is no policy reason to retain it. And in terms of sustainability, the new dwellings would be much more energy efficient. In terms of loss of light and privacy, again the comments from residents are respectfully acknowledged. However, the applicant worked hard with the design of the dwellings, taking into account the pre-application advice provided. As a result, the mass of the houses has been significantly reduced since the previous application, and in particular in relation to number 1, it is further east than 1.4 metres further east than previously submitted. So in summary, and in terms of transport, there was no objection from Essex County Council's Highway Authority. So in summary, we'd urge your committee to grant planning permission. Mr Fox, the developer here, is a local developer and would be keen to develop as soon as possible.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Right, we do have Councillor Whitbread as a ward member as well as council member.
Thank you, Chairman. This application, which has been going on for over a year now, does have a strong level of local feeling behind it. And you can see testament to that is the fact we've still got residents in the gallery at 10:30 in the evening. And first of all, I want to put on my record my very, very strong objection to this site. I absolutely do think it's overdevelopment. I think it will change the character of Woodbury Down forever. I think there are issues in terms of the pressure on local highways. I've been trying to get a North Essex parking partnership scheme in place on Lindsay Street to alleviate some of the highways pressures. But actually, I think when we look at this, and the disrespect actually the developer has shown the neighbours and the neighbouring residents from day one has been pretty shocking and despicable. When this first came about and there was speculation about the application, it was around election time last year and I was out campaigning, and one day I'd been on the road and all the trees were up, and the next day I went and the house was just, all of the trees were completely decimated. Every single tree, by the way, completely taken down, and it was just shocking. I think the other councillor, Whitbread, was out with me, and the change to the character of this road was just shocking, and I fully support the residents in their anger over this issue. Without a doubt, also this house, while it's not locally listed, it should be, and it's unfortunate that that process hasn't been gone through previously, but it is really important to the local character, and looking at the designs on the screen, they're just completely out of keeping with the local area on Woodbury Down and indeed on Lindsay Street. They might be in parallel to some of the unfortunate buildings which unfortunately went through on appeal opposite, but they do not suit the individual character of Woodbury Down and the connecting roads. So we've heard a lot of the kind of detailed objections this evening. Thank you to the Town Council and Mr Saul for his comments, and I think they're really important to note. But this is a shocking overdevelopment of a site, in my opinion. I think it's a tragic loss of a historic home. It's completely out of character with the area, and actually I am very disappointed at the way the developer claims to be a local developer. He's shown no understanding of the local area or no respect for local people and the neighbours on that road, and I would like to stress that very clearly. And as I did state, the highways pressures, both on Lindsay Street and Woodbury Down and the neighbouring connecting roads around Barnfield, would be highly impacted by this. As I said, I strongly urge committee to object to this application this evening. If committee were not minded to object, which I really, really hope and plead that they do, I would say as part of this application, whether the Section 106 monies could be looked at for the NEPP scheme, which is in motion, to make sure that's in place to mitigate the impact. Also, if the conditions around construction, because this is a real area of traffic movement, particularly in the morning and in the afternoons as well, can be looked at very, very carefully. But I really strongly urge committee to object this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we have a recommendation to grant comments, please. Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Chairman. And I do sympathise with local residents, and I have read all the objections, and of course I did go to the site meeting. There are a couple of things that I would like to actually ask, and perhaps the case officer can explain on this. I couldn't see any conditions relating to landscaping is one aspect. Perhaps you can answer that.
There is a condition, condition 6.
Condition 6 requires details of hard and soft landscaping, and there is a requirement shall include at least 8 trees of 14 to 16 centimetre girths in the rear gardens, taking account of the trees that have been lost, and mixed native hedging in the front garden. So that would be a requirement as part of any approval. Should members...
Can I come?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm of course seeing that now. Now, the other thing is that, sadly, this building was not listed, and therefore it's up to the owners if they want to demolish it there's nothing to stop them doing so, as far as I can understand, on planning terms. Can you please also confirm, because of the distance away from buildings, particularly in the rear, that it is too far away to actually affect any overshadowing or light?
That's correct. It's too far away to cause loss of light or overshadowing.
Thank you. I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you. Just briefly, I note that the previous scheme has been appealed, which is worrying, but I take officer's view that enough has been done to make this acceptable. I accept the local feeling about this. I did visit the site. I couldn't do the actual site visits, but I visited on my own. Yeah, I understand the feeling, but I also understand the feeling of those that haven't got a home and are looking for one. And I think 4 fits reasonably well on. I don't see it as overdevelopment, so I will be supporting this application.
Thank you. Councillor Whitbread.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Chairman, this is a site that I've known well for many years. And whilst I accept the arguments over the fact the house wasn't locally listed or listed and has no real historical value, we have to be honest about that. But this site has undergone, in the first instance, a complete vandalism of the site in order to facilitate the planning application. And like Councillor Williamson, I understand the need for homes, and we see that all around the district, and we know the government has loosened up the planning process in order to try and go for growth through building homes. Whether that's right or wrong, that's a national issue that we have to deal with the problems that it's causing us. But this site is not being done in a sympathetic way. It's not making the best of the site. It's not working, and I'm a great believer when you're dealing with good architects tend to work on the basis of consensual planning, particularly in tight residential areas. There's so much that could have been done to improve this. And the key to this is the terrible parking provision. Yes, they've found 2 spaces for each property, but when you hear, so you can see clearly from the plan that cars are going to have to reverse across the footpath. This is a highly intense residential area. In the mornings, you have children, numerous children, walking to school. There's already enough problems in walking to school in that area, I promise you, with Lindsay Street, with speeding cars and everything else. Parking in that part of Lindsay Street and at that junction is an absolute nightmare. In fact, I'm disgusted that Essex Highways haven't brought it up. I'm furious because this has been an ongoing problem since the Shaftesbury Road and Lindsay Street development was allowed. A real issue. And whilst I understand, and I know your committee this evening will make a decision based upon the plan that it has before it, and it is under a lot of pressure, there is still an outstanding appeal on this side. And this application is not a good application from the point of view of what they're planning to put on that site. It is overdevelopment. It is obvious. The parking scheme is poor. Any discussion with residents, and I forget the right to light and all the rest of it, I accept that. Any discussion with local people to try and improve this site just hasn't happened. Something needs to be done here. There is something very seriously that needs to be given further consideration. And I'm just shocked that any local developer would not want to engage with residents to at least try and get the best outcome you can. You know, at the end of the day, we're about, yes, we know we need to provide more homes, but you have to provide good homes, homes to the future, homes that will build a community as already exist around Woodbury Down and around Barnfield. These places are historic communities. We don't want to be disrupted to such a point because of a bad development.
Thank you. Thank you. I think anybody who attended the site visit on Friday were very aware of the really tight, restrictive parking in Woodbury Down. And I must admit, it hadn't actually occurred to me about the vehicles would be reversing out of that across the pavement. It literally is on that really nasty tight bend immediately off Lindsay Street. So I think there is potentially a real problem there. Any further comments, members? Sorry, Councillor Morris.
Yeah, so I just wasn't very clear. Can we, just from the planning officer, there is an appeal going through at the moment
Yes.
for an application on this same site.
Yes, so
Yeah.
it's...
And the difference between the appealed application and this one, I mean, I'm trying to get to the reason why this one is being...
a slide that shows the difference in the heights.
Yeah. Let's put it.
Sorry, I might have missed it in your
No, but there was
Sorry.
not at all. It's getting late. But there was one slide that actually showed an orange dotted line that showed the outline of the other application, I think.
Yeah, so you can see this shows what the previous appeal scheme was. So the gaps, the widths have been reduced by 1.4 metres and the ridge heights have been reduced by between 45 centimetres and 50 centimetres.
And sorry, one further question, Suki. Did you say that one of the neighbouring properties had already gone up into the roof as well?
Yeah, so number 5, next door, if you can see my red dot, that one's got a dormer, a permitted development dormer in the...
at the rear, but nothing, obviously nothing at the front though?
No, yeah.
And it's on higher, obviously it's at a higher
land, yeah.
So it's not as bulky as the... Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any further comments? Yep, Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Chair. I think both the Whitbreads and the speakers spoke beautifully on it. I can't support it. I think it's much too large, much too big. I don't approve of going onto sites and just poleaxing them and saying, well, there's nothing here, but we're going to have a biodiversity gain. It's poor planning in the extreme. I just hope there'll be a couple of other councillors that might go the same way as I. I can't support it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dadd.
I'm struggling to find any planning policies that is non-compliant with, to be honest, regardless of whether I like it or not.
So, any further comments? Okay, in that case, members, we have... Oh, sorry, Councillor Whitbread.
Chairman, just before you members go to any vote on this, surely the consideration could be that refusal is based upon the previous refusal of the other application, which is very, very similar in many ways. It's only, we're talking about a small reduction in the size and mass of what's proposed. So surely the application that's currently under appeal, your reasons for refusal could be the same as. Nothing has changed really dramatically in this application to make it any better. And in some ways with the parking situation, it's even worse. And there's been no conversation with residents. And I'm sure that officers, when they came to this decision, it was finely balanced. I would have thought that's the true position on this application. Finely balanced. And I err on the side of the locality.
Thank you. Right, members, we have a recommendation to grant planning permission. All those in favour of granting, please show.
4. Sorry, 5.
All those against granting.
4.
I don't think that's any, I think it's everybody, no abstentions. In that case, members, very narrowly, planning permission has been granted. Right, members, that does bring us at last to the end of tonight's agenda. Members of the public, I would ask, especially considering the time, that if you could please leave the public gallery as quickly as possible. We'd very much appreciate it. Members, thank you for your patience, and I am closing the meeting at 22:45.
No donuts in the Commons Lane.
No.